Mr. Krabs and Plankton were revealed as lifelong best friends who built a restaurant together. Yet another episode claims they were always enemies from their very first interaction 25 years ago. Patrick created wildly successful marketing slogans that brought massive crowds to eat terrible chum, but in a different episode, getting even one customer for that same terrible chum required literal bribery because marketing apparently doesn't exist. Mr. Krabs willingly spent tens of thousands of dollars on Pearl's 16th birthday party, including hiring the most expensive band in Bikini Bottom, yet later forced SpongeBob to pay an entire year's salary to cover Pearl's business expenses because Mr. Krabs couldn't tolerate any financial loss. And those are just 3 of the mind-bending SpongeBob inconsistencies in this video. Can you imagine all the contradictory stuff there is to uncover when we dive deep into 3 hours of SpongeBob inconsistencies to fall asleep to over the next 3 hours? I was certainly shocked by some of the stuff I found when I made this video. So if you're ready to be blown away by what's about to come, sit back, relax, maybe check if your best friend is secretly your arch nemesis. And let's begin. Let's start with SpongeBob's driving ability. SpongeBob SquarePants has one of television's longest running failures, getting a driver's license. The yellow sponge has dedicated his entire existence to flipping patties and attempting to pass his boating exam, making his complete inability to drive one of the show's core running gags. His failures have become so legendary that they've essentially defined his character arc across multiple seasons. The whole premise of SpongeBob's relationship with Mrs. Puff revolves around his catastrophic driving skills. Season after season, episode after episode, we watch this absorbent fry cook demolish property, traumatize his instructor, and turn simple driving tests into apocalyptic disasters. Mrs. Puff has been sent to prison, suffered countless injuries, and presumably developed severe PTSD from teaching this particular student. The show has built an entire comedy foundation on the fact that SpongeBob will never ever get his license. In Driven to Tears, we get the full scope of SpongeBob's failure. He's taken the test 57 times, 57 attempts at passing a basic driving exam. That's more attempts than most people make at anything in their entire lives, except maybe trying to cancel a gym membership. Patrick, his best friend who stores his thoughts in a literal rock and once forgot how to eat, takes the test on a whim while wearing his underwear and passes with a perfect score. A perfect score, Patrick Star, the same starfish who needed instructions on how to open a jar, becomes a licensed driver before SpongeBob can even complete attempt number 58. The kicker comes when Patrick wins a brand new boat mobile for being the 1 millionth person to pass the test. 1 million people have successfully obtained their licenses while SpongeBob continues to fail. The entire population of Bikini Bottom has apparently mastered the skill that eludes him. Even the Flying Dutchman probably has a valid license at this point, and he's been dead for centuries. Sleepy Time throws a wrench into this established incompetence. When SpongeBob enters his own dream, a driver's license literally materializes for him. The dream sequence shows him behind the wheel, cruising along with his precious laminated card in hand. Sure, he immediately crashes and drives off-road, like he's auditioning for a Fast and Furious reboot, directed by someone who's never seen a road before, but the license exists in his dream world. His subconscious conjured up the one thing he desperately wants, handed it to him on a silver platter, and let him drive. Mrs. Puff shows up to tear the license into pieces. Even in his dreams, she can't escape him, delivering the brutal line, "Not even in your dreams, Mr. Squarepants," which is hilariously ironic because he literally was having the dream until she dream crashed it. The dream logic here creates a fascinating paradox. SpongeBob's mind can imagine himself with a license, can visualize himself driving, can create an entire fantasy where he's achieved his life's goal, yet even in that fantasy, Mrs. Puff appears to shut it down. The inconsistency cuts deeper than just dream versus reality. If SpongeBob has failed 57 times by season 4, and the show treats his inability to drive as absolute gospel, why does his dream in season 1 show him with a license at all? His subconscious should be as traumatized as Mrs. Puff's actual conscious. His dreams should feature him running away from boats, or taking the bus, or having nightmares where the boat mobile turns into a giant Mrs. Puff who's screaming about proper turn signals. The dream sequence suggests that somewhere in SpongeBob's mind, he genuinely believes he can drive. He's created a mental image where possessing a license is possible, where he can operate a vehicle, albeit poorly, where the thing he wants most actually exists. This contradicts the Patrick situation entirely. When your best friend passes on his first try while you're deep into double-digit failures, that kind of trauma should rewire your brain. SpongeBob should be dreaming about burning down the DMV, starting a petition to eliminate driving entirely, or opening a successful business that provides personal chauffeurs to boating school dropouts. The aftermath of Patrick's success makes the dream even more baffling. SpongeBob completely snaps, tears up Patrick's license, and ends up in jail for 90 days. This is a man who has been psychologically destroyed by his repeated failures. His criminal record now includes littering and evading police, because he couldn't handle his friend's success. Yet back in Sleepy Time, his dream self was cruising around with a license like it was the most natural thing in the world. No psychological scars, no trauma. just a yellow sponge living his best dream life before Mrs. Puff showed up to reality check him. The other characters' dreams in Sleepy Time make sense. Patrick dreams about a kiddie ride because Patrick's brain operates on a toddler's wavelength. Squidward dreams about being a classical musician because he's delusional about his own talent. Plankton dreams about being giant and destroying the Krusty Krab because he's a villain with straightforward goals. SpongeBob's dream should logically feature him as the world's greatest fry cook, or living in a pineapple made of gold, or having his own spatula museum. The driver's license appearing suggests his subconscious prioritizes driving success over literally everything else in his life, including his actual successful career. The show's writers clearly didn't think viewers would analyze dream logic. This deeply jokes on them. We absolutely would. But the inconsistency reveals something accidentally profound. SpongeBob's dream shows us what he wants most. And apparently, that's not just passing the test through hard work or skill development. His dream gives him the license through magic. It just appears. His subconscious has given up on earning the license legitimately and has resorted to supernatural intervention. By the time Driven to Tears rolls around, SpongeBob has completely lost any semblance of dream optimism. He's bitter, resentful, and ready to commit crimes over someone else's success. The journey from "my dream gave me a license" to "I'm literally tearing up my best friend's license and going to jail" represents character development in the worst possible direction. SpongeBob went from hopeful dreamer to criminal because the universe, and the show's writers, decided he would never achieve this one specific goal. The real tragedy lives in the math. SpongeBob has failed 57 times. Patrick passed once. 1 million other residents have passed. Mrs. Puff has taught countless students successfully. The Bikini Bottom DMV has probably processed hundreds of thousands of licenses. Everyone except SpongeBob has figured out the basics of operating a boat mobile. Even in his dreams, where physics can be ignored and reality can be whatever he wants, Mrs. Puff still shows up to crush his hopes. That's some aggressive narrative consistency about his driving inconsistency. The license in Sleepy Time represents what might be the cruelest joke the show ever played on SpongeBob. It gave him exactly what he wanted in the one place where anything is possible, then immediately took it away. His dream became a nightmare because even his own imagination couldn't protect him from his fundamental incompetence. The dream sequence accidentally predicted his future. SpongeBob will get close to having a license, will hold it in his hands, will experience that moment of pure joy, and then reality, or Mrs. Puff, will snatch it away. The inconsistency between these episodes highlights how the show treats SpongeBob's driving as both a character-defining trait and a flexible plot device. When the writers need SpongeBob to be optimistic about driving, they'll show him dreaming about success. When they need him to be pathetic and desperate, they'll have Patrick pass effortlessly, while SpongeBob fails his 58th attempt. The license exists in his dreams, but dissolves in his reality, creating a loop where hope and failure chase each other across 20-plus seasons of television. SpongeBob's relationship with that driver's license has caused more emotional damage than most people experience in therapy. He's watched his best friend succeed immediately, spent 90 days in jail over that success, and continues showing up to Mrs. Puff's boating school like a glutton for punishment. Yet way back in Season 1, his dream casually handed him a license like it was ordering a Krabby Patty. That's the inconsistency that keeps giving. The show can't decide if SpongeBob's failure is absolute, or if somewhere in some dimension, even a dream one, he deserves a chance at success. The dream sequence in Sleepy Time gives us a glimpse of a universe where SpongeBob has a license. It exists. It's real within the dream. Mrs. Puff has to actively intervene to destroy it. This implies that in SpongeBob's natural state, without external interference, he would have his license. The universe has to work against him to maintain his failure. That's either really deep commentary about how society holds back the ambitious, probably not, or it's just the writers forgetting that they were building toward 57-plus failures and counting. Definitely this one. The whole driving ability inconsistency boils down to one question. Can SpongeBob actually drive, or can't he? His dream says maybe. His reality says absolutely not. Patrick's perfect score says the test is passable. Mrs. Puff's trauma says SpongeBob specifically cannot be trusted near anything with a motor. The show wants SpongeBob to be simultaneously capable enough to dream about driving and incompetent enough to fail forever. That's some Schrodinger's driver's license situation where SpongeBob both can and cannot drive until Mrs. Puff observes him and everything explodes. SpongeBob's driving disaster tees us up for Patrick's dream reveal, where things get weird enough to pull you even deeper in. Patrick Star has one of the most revealing dream sequences in television history. When SpongeBob jumps into Patrick's dream during Sleepy Time, he discovers something genuinely disturbing about his best friend's inner mind. Patrick is sitting on a 25-cent kiddie ride in a completely blank white void. Just Patrick, a mechanical horse, and infinite nothingness. SpongeBob tries desperately to show Patrick what's possible in dreams. He transforms into a skyscraper. Patrick responds with, "Yep." SpongeBob creates 1,000,000 copies of himself. Patrick says, "Yep," again. The starfish demonstrates zero imagination, zero curiosity, and zero ability to conceptualize anything beyond his immediate reality. When his quarter runs out and the ride stops, Patrick just sits there with a blank stare, completely defeated by the loss of his last coin. Dreams are supposed to be windows into your deepest thoughts, desires, and imagination. Patrick's subconscious can't conceive of anything more complex than a kiddie ride that costs a quarter. The blank white void surrounding him suggests his mind has no stored memories, just emptiness and the vague desire to ride a mechanical horse. Every other character has elaborate dreams reflecting their personality. Gary dreams about reading poetry in a library. Squidward performs as Mozart for royalty. Sandy skydives from planes. Patrick sits on a mechanical ride in a white void. Driven to Tears completely contradicts this mental simplicity. Patrick walks into Mrs. Puff's boating school wearing only his underwear and passes the driving test with a perfect score on his first attempt. Zero mistakes. The boating exam has defeated SpongeBob 57 times, traumatized Mrs. Puff into regular therapy, and caused countless accidents. Patrick breezes through it like he's ordering a Krabby Patty. The driving test requires reading comprehension, spatial awareness, understanding traffic laws, hand-eye coordination, and the ability to follow complex instructions. Patrick Star, whose dream world consists of absolutely nothing, somehow possesses all these skills naturally. He wins a brand new Bass Blaster 3000 boat mobile for being the 1,000,000th person to pass the test. 1,000,000 other residents figured this out before SpongeBob, and Patrick joins that club on attempt number 1. SpongeBob explicitly asks Patrick if he wants to see what you can do in dreams, implying you can imagine anything, create worlds, fly, transform reality itself. Patrick can't even imagine a second quarter for his ride. His cognitive limitations are so severe that he sits in despair staring at empty space rather than manifesting a new quarter through dream logic. SpongeBob literally just demonstrated this principle by creating 1,000,000 versions of himself. Patrick watched this happen and still couldn't apply the concept to his quarter situation. Mrs. Puff gives Patrick zero preparation. He walks in cold, takes the test, and achieves perfection. The show establishes that Patrick has no apparent knowledge of how basic society functions. He thought his parents were SpongeBob's parents in Driven to Tears. They have to correct him. He doesn't understand that you need to stop at red lights. He makes illegal U-turns through orphanages. Yet somehow this walking disaster aced a test that specifically covers all these concepts. Patrick's dream void suggests he has no background thoughts processing information. When Patrick isn't actively engaged with external stimuli, his brain just stops. The mechanical ride represents the most basic possible desire: simple, repetitive motion that requires zero brain activity. His subconscious can't generate anything more complex than a horse that moves when you feed it quarters. The driving test measures knowledge retention, decision-making ability, and understanding of abstract concepts like right-of-way and speed limit. Patrick's dream proves he can't retain anything. The ride stops, he loses his quarter, and he immediately forgets he could just imagine more quarters despite SpongeBob demonstrating this exact principle moments earlier. His brain has no framework for learning, yet he gets a perfect score. Patrick shows up, takes the test, and beats every other student Mrs. Puff has ever taught. The 1,000,000th person to pass the test demonstrates zero preparation, zero study time, and zero mental capacity based on his subconscious baseline. Luck doesn't get you a perfect score. Luck might help you guess a few answers correctly. Luck doesn't manifest comprehensive knowledge of traffic laws and driving mechanics in someone whose dream life consists of a kiddie ride in white void. SpongeBob's dream shows him driving a boat mobile, getting a license, and experiencing complex emotions about his achievements. Patrick's dream shows him unable to conceive of anything beyond immediate physical sensation. SpongeBob has failed 57 times despite clearly understanding what driving means. Patrick succeeds instantly despite his subconscious revealing he can't even imagine a second quarter appearing in his pocket. The show wants Patrick to be both completely stupid and randomly competent depending on what's funnier for that specific episode. His dream commits to the stupidity angle so hard that it becomes canon. Patrick's inner mind is literally empty space with a mechanical ride. You can't walk that back. Patrick's dream reveals that when you strip away external input, there's nothing inside. Just a starfish sitting on a ride waiting for it to move. Then, he passes a driving test perfectly on his first try, wins a luxury vehicle, and spends the rest of the episode competently operating that vehicle while SpongeBob watches in despair. Patrick's subconscious says he can barely handle a kiddie ride. Reality says he can handle comprehensive examinations measuring multiple forms of intelligence without any visible effort, preparation, or understanding of what he just accomplished. The void in his head somehow produced a perfect test score. The quarter that rolled away somehow predicted Patrick would have everything SpongeBob desperately wanted. Patrick's dream world emptiness sets up something even stranger, because the next inconsistency hits SpongeBob's entire origin story. In episode Help Wanted, SpongeBob SquarePants has built his entire identity around one singular goal: making Krabby Patties at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob describes the restaurant as the finest eating establishment ever established for eating, the Krusty Krab, home of the Krabby Patty. He stares at the building with reverence, announcing that for years, he's been dreaming of this moment. Years, plural, multiple years of his life, dedicated to fantasizing about flipping patties at this specific restaurant. Patrick reinforces this obsession during his motivational speech. He asks SpongeBob, whose first words were, "May I take your order?" SpongeBob confirms they were his. His literal first words as a baby involved taking food orders. He came out of the womb ready to work customer service at a fast food restaurant. Patrick continues, "Who made a spatula out of toothpicks in woodshop?" SpongeBob did. The guy has been training his entire existence for fry cook duties. His childhood, his education, his first spoken sentence all revolved around this career path. The episode treats Krabby Patties and the Krusty Krab as long-established institutions in Bikini Bottom. When the anchovy crisis hits, SpongeBob makes hundreds of perfect Krabby Patties without any training whatsoever. He knows the recipe instinctively. He chops vegetables, adds condiments, assembles the burgers with expert precision. The implication is clear. SpongeBob has spent his whole life preparing for this, because Krabby Patties have existed his whole life. In episode Friend or Foe, this timeline completely falls apart. The episode shows the origin of the Krabby Patty through an extended flashback narrated by Mr. Krabs himself. We see Krabs and Plankton as babies born on the same day, November 30th, 1942. We watch them grow up together through childhood, getting bullied in elementary school, discovering money, and eventually deciding to open a restaurant together as teenagers or young adults. The flashback shows them creating their burger recipe from scratch at a dump. They experiment, take notes, and emerge with the best-looking burger under the sea. They convert a trailer into a restaurant and start selling their creation. This is explicitly the first time Krabby Patties exist. Mr. Krabs and Plankton invented them together. Before this moment, the recipe didn't exist. The product didn't exist. The Krusty Krab didn't exist because it came later after they split up. Karen's computer shows the actual moment of creation. Old Man Jenkins tries their burger and gets poisoned because they messed up the recipe. During their argument over whose fault it was, Plankton slams a door that causes jars to fall into their cooking pot. Mr. Krabs tastes the new mixture and declares, "I've done it! I've discovered the perfect patty batter." Right there, that's when the Krabby Patty was born, within Mr. Krabs' young adult lifetime. The math doesn't work. If Mr. Krabs invented the Krabby Patty as a teenager or young adult, and SpongeBob appears to be an adult in Help Wanted, then the Krabby Patty has only existed for maybe 20 years maximum. SpongeBob's first words were supposedly, "May I take your order?" But there was no established restaurant culture around Krabby Patties when he was a baby. The product literally didn't exist yet. The Friend or Foe flashback shows the pre-Krabby Patty world of Bikini Bottom. Kids went to Stinky Burgers, which served terrible food from a guy named Stinky who farted a lot and treated poor kids like garbage. That was the burger landscape. No Krusty Krab. And no beloved fast food empire for young SpongeBob to dream about. When baby SpongeBob was supposedly saying, "May I take your order?" as his first words, Mr. Krabs was still wearing rags made from Old Man Jenkins' washcloth and getting bullied at school. SpongeBob's woodshop spatula project makes even less sense. He crafted a spatula out of toothpicks specifically for Krabby Patty preparation. This suggests he was already obsessed with the product during his school years. But if Krabs and Plankton were still figuring out their recipe during their school years, how could SpongeBob be preparing for a job that didn't exist yet? The timeline becomes a pretzel of impossibility. Help Wanted treats the Krusty Krab like McDonald's, an institution so ingrained in the culture that aspiring to work there makes sense. SpongeBob wants the job at the restaurant making the legendary burger. This only works if the Krusty Krab has been around long enough to achieve legendary status. Restaurants don't become cultural touchstones overnight. Patrick's motivational questions accidentally expose the timeline problem. Whose first words were, "May I take your order?" works if there's an established restaurant culture. Who made a spatula out of toothpicks in woodshop? Works if Krabby Patties are already famous enough that a kid would dedicate a school project to them. These questions fall apart when you realize Mr. Krabs was still getting bullied and wearing rag clothes while SpongeBob was supposedly building toothpick spatulas in preparation for his future career. The anchovy feeding frenzy shows SpongeBob's natural talent. He makes hundreds of perfect Krabby Patties without any training or instruction. The recipe is somehow hardwired into him. This makes sense if Krabby Patties have been around forever and SpongeBob has been studying them obsessively. This makes zero sense if they were invented recently by Mr. Krabs accidentally spilling ingredients into a pot. The inconsistency reveals the challenge of running a show for multiple seasons. Help Wanted established SpongeBob's lifelong dream without explaining when that dream started. Friend or Foe wanted to tell an origin story about Mr. Krabs and Plankton's friendship without considering that pushing the Krabby Patty's invention into recent history makes SpongeBob's backstory impossible. Now we're stuck with a protagonist whose first words referenced a product that hadn't been invented yet when he was a baby. That's some time-traveling toddler situation. Or SpongeBob is a prophet who saw the future and dedicated his life to preparing for a burger that destiny told him would eventually exist. SpongeBob's timeline issues are wild enough, but things get even messier once you look at Patrick's family tree and how the show can't decide who he actually is. But before we get into that, subscribe to our channel. In episode Rule of Dumb, Patrick Star receives the surprise of his lifetime when a well-dressed starfish from the royal ministry shows up at his rock. The official carries a family tree that traces back centuries, starting with the marriage of King Amoeba and Queen Mildew, then working through a few inbred generations. The show's words, not mine, until landing directly on Patrick. According to this ancient genealogical document, Patrick is descended from royalty. He's a king. The royal ministry representative places a crown on Patrick's head and bows before departing to be at His Majesty's service. The episode treats this royal lineage as legitimate family history. Patrick has actual royal blood running through his starfish veins. The family tree is an official document maintained by the royal ministry, complete with generations of ancestors connecting Patrick to ancient underwater monarchs. SpongeBob explains that being king means Patrick can have anything he wants, and Patrick immediately starts exercising his newfound royal privileges. He takes food from customers, steals comic book collections, confiscates jewelry, and even moves Squidward's entire house to make room for a royal Ferris wheel. The power goes to Patrick's head, spectacularly shocking, I know. He becomes tyrannical, demanding eternal loyalty treaties, and threatening to imprison anyone who questions his authority. The episode shows Patrick transforming from lovable idiot to power-hungry monarch who sees himself as fundamentally different from regular Bikini Bottom citizens. His royal blood apparently justifies taking whatever he wants from whoever he wants. The crown and lineage give him an identity beyond guy who lives under a rock. The royal ministry representative returns at the end to deliver crucial news. He discovered a coffee stain on the family tree that, upon removal, reveals the truth. Gary the snail is the actual heir to the king's crown. Patrick wasn't royalty after all. The coffee stain had been covering Gary's picture on the parchment. Patrick immediately gives back the crown, relieved to return to his normal life after experiencing what power and responsibility feel like. Spoiler, he hated the responsibility part. In episode I'm with Stupid, Patrick receives a completely different kind of family visit. His parents are coming for Starfish Day, and Patrick is terrified because they think he's dumber than a sack of diapers. When Janet and Marty arrive, they treat Patrick like he has the intellectual capacity of kelp. They congratulate him for recognizing them, praise him for putting drinks in something this time, and act like basic motor functions are major achievements. These are regular starfish parents dealing with their regular starfish son who happens to be exceptionally dim. Janet and Marty show zero indication of royal connections. They live normal lives, visit their son on holidays, and worry about his intelligence level like typical middle-class parents. There's no mention of castles, kingdoms, or ancient monarchical bloodlines. They don't carry themselves with royal bearing or reference any family history beyond Patrick's tendency to forget things. When they compliment Patrick, it's for basic life skills like remembering where his house is and holding hands properly. Not exactly the concerns of a royal dynasty. The episode's twist reveals that Janet and Marty aren't even Patrick's real parents. They're random starfish who got lost looking for their actual son. Patrick's real parents are Herb Star and Margie Star, who show up at the end after standing outside Squidward's house all day asking, "Where's Patrick?" Herb and Margie are also completely ordinary starfish. Herb congratulates Patrick for recognizing them this time, and Margie praises him for remembering to get dressed. These are the people who actually raised Patrick, and they're as far from royalty as you can get. Here's where the inconsistency crystallizes. Rule of Dumb establishes that Patrick has a documented family tree going back centuries to literal underwater royalty. Even though the coffee stain revelation shows Patrick isn't the heir, the family tree still existed and connected him to that royal lineage closely enough that the royal ministry thought he was the legitimate king. The ministry did extensive genealogical research tracing Patrick's ancestry back through generations. That level of official documentation doesn't appear out of nowhere. I'm with Stupid shows Patrick's actual family. Herb and Margie Star, regular folks, they're starfish who visit their son on holidays and struggle with his severe intellectual limitations. When Herb and Margie show up, there's no mention of, "Oh, by the way, We're descended from King Amoeba and Queen Mildew. They're just Patrick's parents who are relieved when he remembers basic things like getting dressed. The royal ministry's family tree had to come from somewhere. Genealogical records required documentation, birth records, historical archives. You can't accidentally create a multi-generational family tree that traces someone back to ancient royalty unless there's some legitimate connection in their ancestry. Even if Patrick himself wasn't the direct heir, thanks to that convenient coffee stain, his family had to be in the royal lineage close enough that a professional genealogist would make that mistake. But Herb and Margie Starr are about as royal as a Krabby Patty. They're working-class starfish raising a son who can barely function. There's no forgotten palace in their past. They're dealing with Patrick forgetting which house is his and congratulating him for basic recognition skills. These are not people descended from royalty, even distantly. The show wants Patrick to be both connected to ancient royal bloodlines and the son of completely average parents. Rule of Dumb needed Patrick to have legitimate royal ancestry even if mistaken for the plot to work. I'm with Stupid needed his parents to be regular folks worried about their dumb son. The royal ministry's centuries-old family tree somehow connected Patrick to King Amoeba and Queen Mildew through documented generations. Herb and Margie Starr are just trying to get their son to remember pants. Either Patrick is descended from ancient underwater monarchy with official genealogical records proving it, or he's the son of two regular starfish who have zero connection to royalty. The coffee stain excuse doesn't fix this because the family tree still had Patrick in it before the stain was removed. His family was close enough to the royal line that professionals believed he was the heir. That doesn't happen to the children of Herb and Margie Starr, average starfish couple from regular starfish town. Patrick's family contradictions are already wild. But things jump to a whole new level once you look at how the show handles Sandy, because her very first appearance flat out can't coexist with what the series later claims about her. In episode Tea at the Tree Dome, SpongeBob meets Sandy for the first time at Jellyfish Fields. After she fights off a giant clam using karate moves, they bond over their shared interest in martial arts. Sandy invites SpongeBob over for tea and cookies the next day, giving him a map to her tree dome. When SpongeBob arrives and Sandy lets him inside her dome, nearly killing him by draining all the water, she tells him something significant. You're the first sea critter to ever visit. The first. Ever. Sandy explicitly states that in all her time living underwater in Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob is the very first underwater creature to enter her tree dome. She's been living in this dome with her air bubble, her oak tree, her bird bath, and her treadmill, completely isolated from the local population. No squids have knocked on her door. Just Sandy, alone in her plastic dome, with zero sea creature guests until SpongeBob shows up with flowers. This isolation makes sense in context. Sandy is a land mammal living underwater in a specialized environment. She needs air to breathe, which means she's fundamentally incompatible with the water-breathing residents of Bikini Bottom. Her tree dome is a sealed environment specifically designed to keep water out and air in. The locals probably see this weird dome structure and think, that's not for us, and keep their distance. Sandy's been living in her own private Texas bubble, separated from the community. When she says, you're the first sea critter to ever visit, there's a tone of genuine appreciation. She likes SpongeBob. She thinks they could be tighter than bark on a tree. This moment marks Sandy's first real friendship with an underwater resident. Before SpongeBob, she's been completely alone in terms of sea creature companionship. She has her science, her karate, her Texas tea, but no underwater friends. In episode Chimps Ahoy, Sandy faces a crisis. Her bosses from Tree Dome Enterprises Limited are coming for an inspection, and if she doesn't impress them with her inventions, they'll cut her funding and she'll have to leave Bikini Bottom. Sandy is devastated by this prospect, which makes sense if she's built a life in this community. SpongeBob tries to comfort her, and in doing so, he makes a remarkable claim to Sandy's bosses: why everyone in town has benefited from Sandy's scientific knowledge. Before Sandy showed up, I used to be a scrawny weakling. Everyone in town has benefited from Sandy's scientific knowledge. SpongeBob is claiming that Sandy has had widespread positive impact on the entire Bikini Bottom population. He positions her as someone who has integrated into the community, shared her expertise, and improved the lives of countless residents. Patrick backs this up by saying, and I used to be dumb debatable, but okay, Patrick, implying Sandy somehow helped with that too. The chimps are evaluating Sandy's work, which suggests she's been conducting research and developing inventions with the community for a while. She's apparently become a scientific resource for the entire town. Everyone knows about her. Everyone has benefited from her. She's become an established member of Bikini Bottom society to the point where the thought of leaving makes her sing a sad song about all the things she'll miss. But how did everyone in town benefit from Sandy's scientific knowledge if SpongeBob was the first sea critter to ever visit her dome? Did Sandy conduct all her community science work without anyone ever entering her living space? Did she set up office hours outside the tree dome where fish could come ask questions? Did she publish papers that everyone read but never followed up with a house visit? SpongeBob being the first sea critter to ever visit suggests total isolation. Nobody has been inside, nobody has seen her set up, nobody has experienced her environment. She's been a hermit in a bubble, yet somehow, according to later episodes, she's been helping everyone in town with scientific matters. She's made such an impact that SpongeBob credits her with transforming him from a scrawny weakling into whatever he is now, still pretty scrawny, honestly. The show wants Sandy to be both the isolated scientist in her dome and the beloved community member who helps everyone. Tea at the Tree Dome emphasizes her separation from sea creatures. SpongeBob is special because he's breaking that barrier as the first visitor ever. Chimps Ahoy emphasizes her integration into Bikini Bottom. Everyone knows her, everyone has benefited from her, she's devastated at the thought of leaving. These are fundamentally different versions of Sandy's relationship with Bikini Bottom. Either she's been isolated in her dome with 0 sea creature visitors until SpongeBob showed up, or she's been an active participant in the community helping everyone with science. She can't be both the hermit scientist who has never had a sea creature guest and the community resource that everyone in town has benefited from. Maybe Sandy conducted all her community outreach without ever inviting anyone inside. Maybe she held science fairs outside the dome. Maybe she published research papers in the Bikini Bottom Gazette. Maybe she taught karate classes at the local gym. But none of that changes her explicit statement. SpongeBob is the first sea critter to ever visit her dome. Not the first this week. Not the first this month. The first ever. That's pretty definitive. By Chimps Ahoy, SpongeBob confidently tells 3 chimps in suits that everyone in town has benefited from Sandy's scientific knowledge. This requires Sandy to have had significant interaction with the Bikini Bottom population. You can't help everyone in town while maintaining complete isolation. Those two realities don't coexist. The inconsistency reveals how the show treats Sandy's integration into the community. The pilot episode needed to establish her as different and isolated a land creature in a SeaWorld, alone in her dome. Later episodes needed her to be an established community member with deep connections to Bikini Bottom, so her potential departure would have emotional weight. The show chose whichever version of Sandy worked better for each individual episode's story, leaving us with a squirrel who was simultaneously the town hermit and the town's favorite scientist. Patrick's family mess is wild, but Sandy's intro gets even crazier, because the show can't decide if she's a total newcomer or someone who already reshaped Bikini Bottom before anyone met her. In episode Scaredy Pants, Mr. Krabs settles in to tell SpongeBob his annual scary story about the Flying Dutchman. He explains the legend with chilling detail. Every year on Halloween night, the Flying Dutchman descends on Bikini Bottom in a pirate ship. Every year, Halloween night, that's the schedule. The Flying Dutchman has a specific date circled on his ghost calendar when he makes his appearance to terrorize the town and steal souls. Mr. Krabs treats this as established fact, an annual tradition as reliable as Christmas or tax day. The Flying Dutchman shows up on Halloween, steals souls with his soul bag, and presumably goes back to wherever ghost pirates spend the other 364 days of the year. This isn't presented as rumor or speculation. Mr. Krabs states it with the confidence of someone who has seen this pattern repeat year after year after year. The Flying Dutchman himself confirms this schedule when he crashes Mr. Krabs' Halloween party. He's furious, shooting flames and threatening everyone, but one complaint stands out. Every year, people dress like me, turning the Flying Dutchman name into a laughingstock. Every year. The Dutchman acknowledges his annual Halloween appearance as routine. People have had enough time to establish costume traditions around him. Squidward even shows up to the party dressed as the Flying Dutchman, suggesting this is common enough that you can buy the costume or make it yourself. The episode establishes clear rules about the Flying Dutchman's visits. He comes once per year. He comes on Halloween specifically. He comes to haunt and steal souls. This is the pattern. Bikini Bottom residents can plan around it. They throw Halloween parties knowing the Flying Dutchman might show up. They dress as him because his annual visits have made him a recognizable figure in local culture. The timing is consistent, predictable, and limited to one specific night. In episode Shanghaied, SpongeBob wakes up on what appears to be a completely normal morning. He's eating Kelpo cereal in his pajamas, looking for prizes in the box, living his regular breakfast routine. There's no indication this is Halloween. No decorations, costumes, jack-o'-lanterns, or trick-or-treaters. Just SpongeBob having cereal on a regular day when suddenly a giant anchor crashes through his house. The anchor belongs to the Flying Dutchman's ship, which is just hovering above Bikini Bottom, dropping anchors wherever it feels like. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward climb the anchor rope and board the ship. The Flying Dutchman is home, hanging out on his vessel, not on any special mission or soul-stealing spree. He's just there, on a random day, above Bikini Bottom, during regular breakfast hours, The Flying Dutchman acts surprised when they board, pulling out his ghost rulebook to explain the consequences. Whosoever sets foot on the Flying Dutchman's ship, uninvited or otherwise, shall become members of his ghostly crew forever. He treats this as standard procedure, suggesting people board his ship regularly enough that he needs official rules written down. He makes them swab the deck and takes them on a haunting spree that same night, trying to scare random Bikini Bottom residents like it's just another evening. Nothing about Shanghai suggests this is Halloween. The Flying Dutchman's ship is simply present above Bikini Bottom on an ordinary day, accessible to anyone who climbs the anchor rope. He's conducting regular business, maintaining his ship, going about his ghostly routine. When he takes SpongeBob and Patrick on a haunting mission, he targets a little kid named Billy who's just playing outside. Billy even says, "I had 4 biscuits and I ate one. Then I only had 3, in a cheerful sing-song voice, completely unaware it's supposed to be a special scary night. The inconsistency is glaring. Scaredy Pants establishes that the Flying Dutchman only visits Bikini Bottom once per year on Halloween night. It's an event. It's predictable. Residents know it's coming and throw parties around it. The Dutchman himself acknowledges this annual tradition, but Shanghai shows his ship casually hanging out above the town on what's clearly not Halloween, dropping anchors on houses during breakfast time, with the Dutchman just going about his normal routine. If the Flying Dutchman only descends on Bikini Bottom once per year on Halloween, his ship shouldn't be parked above SpongeBob's pineapple on a random Tuesday morning. The anchor shouldn't crash through the roof while SpongeBob is eating cereal in his pajamas. The whole premise of Shanghai requires the Flying Dutchman to be present and accessible outside of his designated annual Halloween visit. Mr. Krabs' story in Scaredy Pants makes the Flying Dutchman sound like a seasonal phenomenon, something that appears according to a schedule. The actual Flying Dutchman at the party acts like Halloween is his designated haunting night, the one time per year he makes his rounds. But in Shanghai, he's just hanging around whenever, running a ship above Bikini Bottom like it's his permanent parking spot, ready to conscript anyone who climbs aboard into eternal crew servitude. The show wants the Flying Dutchman to be both a special Halloween-only ghost and a regular fixture of Bikini Bottom who can show up in any episode regardless of season or holiday. Scaredy Pants needed him to be scary and rare, an annual tradition that makes Halloween dangerous. Shanghai needed him to be accessible and present so SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward could board his ship and have an adventure. The Ghost Rule book in Shanghai implies people board the Flying Dutchman's ship regularly enough that he has written rules about it. He even says, "and ever," like he needs to emphasize the permanence, because so many people have tried to argue their way out of eternal crew membership. This suggests frequent encounters. But if he only visits once per year on Halloween, how are people boarding his ship often enough that he needs an official rulebook? Billy the Kid in Shanghai is just playing outside at night, counting his biscuits, acting like it's a normal evening. He's not in a Halloween costume or trick-or-treating. When the Flying Dutchman tries to scare him, Billy calls SpongeBob and Patrick dorks and walks away unimpressed. If this were Halloween night, if this were the one annual appearance of the terrifying Flying Dutchman, Billy would probably be more concerned about the soul-stealing ghost pirate than whether SpongeBob can do finger tricks. The Flying Dutchman's entire operation in Shanghai suggests regular business hours. He has a crew schedule, daily duties, routine haunting missions. He complains about SpongeBob and Patrick being bad employees, like he runs a normal workplace with performance standards. He plans to eat them tomorrow and writes about it in his diary, suggesting he has a multi-day schedule planned out. None of this fits with only showing up one night per year. Either the Flying Dutchman is an annual Halloween phenomenon who descends on Bikini Bottom once per year to steal souls, or he's a regular fixture whose ship hangs around town, drops anchors on houses, and conscripts random passers-by into his crew. The show chose both versions depending on which episode needed what kind of ghost pirate. Scaredy Pants got the scary annual visitor. Shanghai got the everyday supernatural neighbor with a ship problem and a crew shortage. The Flying Dutchman's broken once-a-year schedule is wild enough, but things get even messier when you look at Patrick's own backstory and how the show can't decide whether he built his home or got kicked into it. And if you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe to our channel. In episode Home Sweet Pineapple, SpongeBob's pineapple house gets completely destroyed by nematodes. They drink it with straws until nothing remains except a small seed. SpongeBob is devastated, saying he doesn't know where he'll live. He sadly declares he'll have to move back with his mom and dad. Patrick sees his friend in distress and tries to help. SpongeBob protests that they can't build a house. Patrick responds confidently, telling SpongeBob it's easy. He declares with pride that he built his house all by himself. To emphasize this achievement, the camera shows Patrick's rock. However, the antenna immediately falls off, suggesting perhaps his construction skills aren't as impressive as he claims. Still, Patrick's statement is clear. He personally built his rock dwelling from the ground up with his own hands. SpongeBob and Patrick attempt to construct a new pineapple house together. They work as construction workers, with Patrick holding a hammer and repeatedly hitting himself. They nail boards, paint fences, and assemble various parts. Eventually, they complete a tiny pineapple house that sparkles. When SpongeBob tries it on his head like a hat, his nose sticks out the door and the whole structure breaks into pieces. The construction project fails completely. With nowhere else to go, Patrick offers SpongeBob and Gary the chance to stay with him under his rock. He excitedly announces they'll be rockmates. That night proves disastrous. Patrick snores loudly, drools excessively, and has nightmares about spiders that cause him to violently smash SpongeBob with the rock. After a terrible night, SpongeBob tries asking Squidward if they can stay with him instead. Later in the same episode, after Squidward rejects them and SpongeBob is preparing to leave with his parents, Patrick makes a different statement about his living situation. He tells SpongeBob he can't move back in with his parents. When SpongeBob asks why not, Patrick explains his own situation. When his parents kicked him out of the house, he never went back. He says this as if it's the obvious reason why SpongeBob shouldn't return to his parents either. This creates an immediate contradiction within the same episode. Earlier, Patrick claimed he built his rock house all by himself, implying he chose this location and constructed his dwelling from nothing. But now he's saying his parents kicked him out of their house and he never returned. If Patrick's parents kicked him out, then he didn't build his rock from scratch as an independent construction project. He was forced to leave his parents' home and had to find somewhere to live. He found a rock and moved under it. The two stories don't align. Either Patrick is a self-sufficient builder who constructed his own dwelling as an act of independence, or he's someone whose parents kicked him out and he had to scramble to find shelter under the nearest rock. Building a house implies planning, effort, and choice. Being kicked out implies rejection, urgency, and making do with whatever's available. In episode Pizza Delivery, which aired immediately before Home Sweet Pineapple on the same night, Patrick's living situation isn't directly addressed. However, the episode does show Patrick's rock as an established part of the Bikini Bottom landscape. When SpongeBob mentions his house or going home, it's treated as normal and stable. Patrick exists in this episode but doesn't discuss his housing history. The inconsistency reveals the show's casual approach to character backstories. Patrick's rock is sometimes portrayed as something he built through his own capabilities, suggesting he has construction skills and made an active choice about where to live. Other times, it's portrayed as just where he ended up after his parents kicked him out, suggesting it was a desperate fallback option rather than a deliberate project. If Patrick truly built his rock dwelling himself, that would indicate a level of planning, capability, and independence. He would have surveyed locations, gathered materials, and constructed a livable space. The falling antenna could be seen as a humorous comment on his building skills, but the fact remains he claims to have built the entire structure. If Patrick's parents kicked him out and he never went back, that's a completely different narrative. That suggests family conflict, rejection, and Patrick having to survive on his own, not by choice, but by necessity. Finding a rock and living under it would be making the best of a bad situation, not a construction achievement. You don't build a rock by living under it any more than you build a bridge by sleeping underneath it. The show wants Patrick to be both a capable builder who constructed his own home and a victim of circumstances who had to find emergency shelter after being kicked out. These stories serve different purposes in different contexts. The builder story makes Patrick seem more capable and gives credibility to his offer to help SpongeBob build a new house. The kicked out story creates sympathy and explains why Patrick is so adamant that SpongeBob shouldn't return to his parents' home. But both stories cannot be simultaneously true on the same timeline. Patrick either built his rock or moved under it after being kicked out. The show chose both versions in the same episode, creating an obvious internal contradiction about something as fundamental as where and how Patrick came to live where he lives. Patrick's home story is already a mess, but the contradictions get even bigger once you look at Plankton and Karen, because their relationship jumps from lab equipment to full-on marriage, with no explanation at all. In episode Plankton, Karen exists as Plankton's computer analyzer. When Plankton tries to steal a Krabby Patty and bring it to his lab for analysis, Karen performs her function. A robotic arm drops seaweed into the giant funnel analyzer, and Karen's screen displays the results. Seaweed, 50% sea, 50% weed. A picture of the seaweed appears. Plankton asks if SpongeBob is impressed, demonstrating Karen's capabilities as his scientific equipment. Karen operates as laboratory machinery. She analyzes samples, displays data on her screen, and provides technical readouts. When the analyzer zaps Plankton after he accidentally falls into it, Karen reads out his composition. Plankton, 1% evil, 99% hot gas. She's a tool, a very advanced computer system that happens to have a voice and a name, but functionally she serves as Plankton's lab assistant. There's no indication of anything beyond a user-machine relationship. The episode treats Karen the same way it treats Plankton's other lab equipment. She's mounted to the wall, connected to the analyzer system, speaks in a robotic monotone, and exists solely to help Plankton with his schemes. When she delivers the analysis results, it's purely informational. No jokes, personality, or relationship dynamics. Just data output from a sophisticated computer. Plankton never addresses Karen with affection or familiarity beyond, "Look at my analyzer," and showing off what it can do. He's proud of his technology, the way someone might be proud of a really good microscope or a powerful telescope. Karen is impressive equipment. She tells the ingredients of whatever gets put into her. That's her role in Plankton's operation. In episode Single Cell Anniversary, everything changes. The episode opens with Plankton coming home from work, and Karen greets him. "Plankton, is that you? Welcome home, honey." Honey. She calls him honey. She asks about his day like a concerned spouse. When Plankton smells terrible from the stench of failure, Karen refuses to let him inside smelling like that and forcibly cleans him up, scrubbing him, drying him, and getting him fresh skin from a rack. Karen reminds Plankton about their wedding anniversary. She mentions the moment he asked a certain someone to spend the rest of her life with you and shows off their wedding rings. When Plankton doesn't remember, Karen sobs, "You forgot, and I got you the perfect gift." She's hurt emotionally. She has feelings about their anniversary being forgotten. She calls him a selfish green twit and cries when he acts dismissive about their special day. The episode reveals they have a wedding anniversary they celebrate annually. They exchanged vows, they wear rings. Karen even obtained the Krabby Patty formula as an anniversary gift for Plankton, going to the Krusty Krab herself, somehow now mobile, when she was wall-mounted in Plankton, to get a patty, analyze it, and print out the formula. She did this because she loves him and wanted to give him something he'd treasure. Plankton sings Karen a romantic song. "Oh my Karen, oh my Karen, oh my computer wife Karen, computer wife." He built her, according to the lyrics, "Oh, I built you, yes I built you," and married her. The song describes her beautiful diodes, her cathode ray, her vacuum tubes. Karen cries tears of joy from how beautiful and romantic the gesture is. She tells Plankton, "I love you," and he responds, "I love you too." Karen even has an emergency mother-in-law program that activates when she short-circuits. A mother-in-law, implying Karen has a mother who became Plankton's mother-in-law when they got married. The mother-in-law berates Plankton. "You made her cry. She could have been with an ATM, someone with money, but she chose you. This entire family dynamic exists." The show wants Karen to be both a laboratory computer that analyzes samples and provides data readouts, and Plankton's computer wife with whom he shares a romantic marriage complete with anniversaries, wedding rings, and mother-in-law drama. Plankton needed Karen to be scientific equipment that could analyze the Krabby Patty formula. Single Cell Anniversary needed Karen to be Plankton's wife so the episode could have a romantic anniversary plot. Plankton shows their first interaction in the series. Karen is wall-mounted, stationary, analyzing seaweed, providing technical readouts. She's called Karen Plankton in the display text, which could suggest marriage, but nothing in the episode treats them as married. No affection, relationship dynamics, or indication they're anything beyond inventor and invention. Just Plankton showing off his analyzer to SpongeBob. But if Single Cell Anniversary is accurate, they were already married during Plankton. They already had their wedding, exchanged rings, and became husband and wife. Karen should have been greeting him with, "Welcome home, honey," and asking about his day. Plankton should have been treating her like his spouse. The anniversary episode implies they've been married for years by that point, which would mean their marriage predates the events of Plankton. The inconsistency creates confusion about when they got married and what their relationship was like at the start of the series. Either Karen was always Plankton's wife, even in early episodes where she acted purely as laboratory equipment, or they got married sometime between Plankton and Single Cell Anniversary, which the show never depicts or mentions. The anniversary episode treats their marriage as long-standing, something that's been happening for years with multiple anniversaries already celebrated. Karen's mobility is another issue. In Plankton, she's mounted to the wall as part of the analyzer system. In Single Cell Anniversary, she's wall-mounted in some scenes, but somehow went to the Krusty Krab by herself in the flashback, rolling on wheels to order a Krabby Patty from Squidward. When did Karen get wheels? Why is she sometimes mobile and sometimes stationary? If she could move around in Single Cell Anniversary, why couldn't she move in Plankton? The show picked different versions of Karen depending on what the episode needed. Early episodes needed her to be a computer that analyzes things and provides scientific data. Later episodes needed her to be Plankton's wife with a complex emotional relationship, the ability to cry tears of joy, and even a mother who judges Plankton's adequacy as a husband. Both versions can't coexist on the same timeline without raising questions about when they got married and why their relationship seemed so different in the beginning. Either Plankton and Karen were married from the start, and Plankton just didn't show the affectionate side of their relationship, or they got married later, and Single Cell Anniversary is celebrating a recent wedding anniversary. The show never clarifies, leaving viewers with a computer assistant who somehow became a computer wife without any on-screen transition between those two relationship states. Plankton and Karen's contradictions are bad enough, but things get even weirder once you see how the show can't decide if SpongeBob is Squidward's friendly neighbor or someone who breaks into his house every single morning. In episode Breath of Fresh Squidward, Squidward wakes up to find SpongeBob and Patrick sitting in chairs beside his bed. He's startled and demands to know what they're doing. SpongeBob cheerfully explains, waiting to watch the sunrise with you. Squidward, already annoyed, checks his alarm clock. It's 3:47 in the morning. He asks for clarification about the location. In my bedroom? SpongeBob confirms with a simple, uh-huh. Then comes the revelation. Squidward asks in disbelief, you sneak into my house every morning? SpongeBob confirms this too. Uh-huh. Patrick adds helpful context. It's our favorite pastime. Not an occasional thing. Not a one-time occurrence. Their favorite pastime. Something they do regularly, habitually, as part of their daily routine. SpongeBob pulls out a memory book to prove the point. He shows Squidward pictures documenting their bedroom visits. Here we are on the 4th of July, and Valentine's Day. Oh, you looked so cute on Easter. Multiple holidays. Different times of year. This has been going on for months, possibly years. They've been sneaking into Squidward's bedroom every single morning, sitting in chairs beside his bed, waiting for sunrise, and documenting these visits with photographs. The episode treats this as an established pattern. SpongeBob doesn't act like he's doing anything new or unusual. He's confused why Squidward would be upset since this is their normal routine. Patrick talks about the memories they've shared right in this room, as if Squidward's bedroom is a significant location in their friendship history. This is normal for them. This is what they do every morning. Squidward's reaction suggests he's aware of this pattern. He doesn't act shocked that they've been doing this. He asks them if they remember what happens to his brain every time he sees them, implying they've had this conversation before. SpongeBob eagerly asks to tell the story himself, then launches into a detailed explanation about storm clouds rolling into Squidward's brain and his happy gland getting the flu. They know this story well. They've heard it multiple times. This is routine. The French narrator even cuts in with 3 hours later, while Squidward is still ranting about never wanting to see them again. 3 hours of Squidward complaining while SpongeBob and Patrick sit in his bedroom waiting for sunrise. This happens every morning. They break in at 3:47 a.m., sit there while Squidward rants for 3 hours, watch the sunrise together, then presumably leave. Daily routine established. In episode Good Neighbors, Squidward wakes up to his neighbor's foghorn alarm. SpongeBob suddenly appears in his house, greeting him with, "Good morning, Squidward." Squidward immediately asks, "SpongeBob, what are you doing in my house?" Not, "Why are you here so early?" Not today, SpongeBob. Not get out like I told you yesterday. He asks what SpongeBob is doing in his house as if this is surprising, unexpected, or unusual. SpongeBob explains he came to make sure Squidward doesn't oversleep and miss work. Squidward responds sarcastically, "Oh gee, SpongeBob, that's very thoughtful of you." Then points out it's Sunday, a day off, and angrily kicks SpongeBob out of his house. He yells as SpongeBob flies through the air, "A good neighbor doesn't bother me on Sunday," and slams the door. The entire interaction treats SpongeBob being in Squidward's house as noteworthy. Squidward acts surprised, questions why SpongeBob is there, and kicks him out. There's no indication this is part of a daily pattern. Squidward's response suggests SpongeBob entering his house is an isolated incident worth questioning and stopping. Later in Good Neighbors, when SpongeBob and Patrick show up for their Good Neighbor Lodge activities, they're entering through doors and windows like visitors, not like people who regularly break in every morning at 3:47 a.m. Squidward keeps ordering them out of his house as if they don't belong there, as if they're intruders, as if this isn't something that happens every single day. The inconsistency is obvious. Either SpongeBob and Patrick break into Squidward's bedroom every single morning at 3:47 a.m., document these visits with photographs across multiple holidays, and have made this their favorite pastime for months or years, or SpongeBob entering Squidward's house is unusual enough that Squidward asks, "What are you doing in my house?" with genuine surprise. Breath of Fresh Squidward establishes that Squidward's bedroom is a regular hangout spot for SpongeBob and Patrick. They have chairs set up. They have a routine. They know exactly what time to arrive. They've been doing this long enough to fill a memory book with photographic evidence from different holidays. This is normalized, habitual behavior that Squidward is fully aware of and complains about every morning. Good Neighbors treats SpongeBob's presence in Squidward's house as surprising and inappropriate. Squidward questions it. SpongeBob explains his reasoning as if this is a special circumstance, making sure Squidward doesn't miss work. There's no indication that SpongeBob enters Squidward's house regularly. let alone every single morning for years. It's treated as an isolated incident of poor neighborly boundaries. The show can't have it both ways. Either SpongeBob regularly invades Squidward's home as part of an established daily routine, or SpongeBob entering Squidward's house is unusual enough to warrant the question, "What are you doing in my house?" One episode needed SpongeBob and Patrick to have a long-standing habit of bedroom invasion to set up their memory book and established relationship with Squidward's morning routine. The other episode needed SpongeBob's home entry to be surprising so Squidward could lecture him about good neighbor behavior. The memory book in Breath of Fresh Squidward is particularly damning evidence. SpongeBob has photographs from 4th of July, Valentine's Day, and Easter showing him and Patrick in Squidward's bedroom. These are specific holidays spread across the calendar year. They didn't just start this routine last week. This has been ongoing for at least several months, more likely years. Yet in Good Neighbors, Squidward acts like SpongeBob being in his house requires immediate explanation and justification. Either Squidward is so used to finding SpongeBob and Patrick in his bedroom every morning that he barely reacts beyond his usual complaints, or he's so surprised by SpongeBob's presence that he demands an explanation and physically kicks him out. Breath of Fresh Squidward shows the former. Good Neighbors shows the latter. Both can't be true. SpongeBob's home invader routine is already wild, but things get even more confusing once you look at Patrick himself, because the show can't decide if he's a secret mastermind or someone who can't think past the number 5. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In episode The Card, Patrick enters the comic book store carrying a counting book. He's trying to count, saying numbers out loud. When SpongeBob asks if he's counting change for trading cards, Patrick reveals he's actually thinking about buying the counting book itself. He reads from it excitedly, amazed that after 3 and 4 comes 5. He declares the book is good and decides to purchase it. Patrick struggles to count out coins to pay for the book, slowly going through numbers one by one. When the comic book dealer shows off the ultra-rare card number 54, Patrick isn't paying attention or showing interest. He continues counting up to 100, then gets frustrated and shouts that he hates counting. Out of annoyance, he tells the dealer to just give him whatever SpongeBob is having. He randomly gets the last pack of cards. When Patrick opens his pack and asks if he got a good card, SpongeBob realizes it's the ultra-rare number 54. Patrick immediately starts using it carelessly. He flosses his teeth with it, having no concept of its value. When SpongeBob frantically explains it's really valuable and there are only 5 in existence, Patrick seems to understand and promises to take care of it. Throughout the rest of the episode, Patrick continues destroying the card. He picks his house lock with it, scrapes his dirty grill with it, lights it on fire to start his barbecue, flips burgers with it, and wipes his face with it like a napkin. By the end, the card is completely destroyed, disintegrating into black dust. SpongeBob cries that he'll never have that card now because Patrick bought the last pack. But then Patrick reaches into his pants and pulls out 4 more copies of card number 54. All of them are intact and functional. SpongeBob gasps in shock, asking where Patrick got them. Patrick casually explains that the 1 pack he bought was filled with them. He tells SpongeBob they're all his and walks away. This ending reveals something significant about Patrick's behavior throughout the episode. He knew all along that he had multiple copies of the rare card. He had 4 perfect copies stored in his pants while he spent the entire episode destroying 1 copy in front of SpongeBob. He never mentioned having additional cards. He let SpongeBob panic and worry. He accepted the destroyed card gift back from SpongeBob without revealing he had more. Only after SpongeBob was devastated did Patrick reveal the truth. This suggests Patrick engaged in strategic deception. He understood the card was valuable. He understood SpongeBob wanted it badly. He kept backup copies hidden while publicly destroying one. This requires forward planning, social manipulation, and the ability to maintain a secret over an extended period. In episode Patrick Smart Pants, Patrick and SpongeBob are playing in jellyfish fields when Patrick crashes through a danger sign and falls off a cliff. He lands hard enough that his head completely detaches from his body. SpongeBob pulls Patrick's head out of the ground, screams when he realizes it's just the head, then sees Patrick's headless body walking around. SpongeBob reattaches the head to Patrick's body. Inside Patrick's head, the connection is shown plugging in like an electrical outlet. Gears and cranks start up. Sparks fly from Patrick's head. Suddenly, Patrick's personality completely changes. He speaks in sophisticated language, uses complex vocabulary, and rejects jellyfish catching as barbaric. SpongeBob notices Patrick is using big words he's never heard him use before. Patrick's intelligence increases dramatically. He draws detailed scientific sketches of jellyfish. He quotes statistics and discusses rendering hypotheses. He studies subspecies through microscopes. He recognizes classical music compositions by name and offers technical suggestions about performance. He solves complex mathematical equations. He reads advanced books and conducts experiments. His entire personality transforms from childish to intellectual. Sandy and Squidward both notice Patrick's sudden intelligence and interact with him on an intellectual level. But Patrick becomes arrogant about his intelligence, insulting others and eventually losing his friends because of his superior attitude. SpongeBob is heartbroken at losing his best friend to geniusness. Patrick eventually realizes he misses SpongeBob and wants their friendship back. He conducts research and experiments trying to figure out why they've grown apart. Finally, he decides to recreate the accident from the cliff to understand what changed him. SpongeBob helps Patrick investigate where his head landed. Patrick uses physics and trajectory calculations to determine his head should have landed 5 meters due north from where SpongeBob found it. They discover SpongeBob had attached the wrong head to Patrick's body. The head SpongeBob grabbed was actually brain coral from a nearby brain coral field. Patrick's real head is still on the ground covered in poisoned sea urchins. When they switch the heads back, Patrick immediately returns to his normal stupid self. His first action is to burp and say, "Hi, SpongeBob," in his usual simple manner. The episode explicitly establishes that Patrick's stupidity is biological. It's literally in his head. When his head is physically replaced with intelligent brain coral, he becomes smart. When his original head is reattached, he becomes dumb again. Intelligence is treated as a fixed property of Patrick's brain structure that cannot be changed without literally swapping his head for a different one. The inconsistency is clear. The card shows Patrick capable of strategic deception and forward planning. He understood the value of the cards enough to keep backup copies hidden while destroying one publicly. He maintained this secret throughout an entire episode, while SpongeBob panicked. This requires theory of mind, the ability to predict others' reactions, strategic thinking, and impulse control to not reveal the secret too early. But Patrick Smartpants establishes Patrick's stupidity as biologically fixed. Without brain coral literally replacing his head, he cannot be intelligent. His original brain makes him fundamentally incapable of sophisticated thought. When his real head is back on, he immediately returns to basic stupidity with no capacity for complex planning. Either Patrick can engage in strategic deception and maintain secrets for manipulative purposes, or his biological brain makes him incapable of such sophisticated thinking without a literal head transplant. The show chose both versions. The card needed Patrick to have a clever twist ending, where he reveals hidden cards. Patrick Smartpants needed intelligence to be impossible for Patrick without magic brain replacement. These two characterizations of Patrick's cognitive abilities cannot coexist logically. Patrick's mixed-up intelligence is already wild, but Mrs. Puff's history turns things even darker once you see how the show twists her entire past. In episode No Free Rides, Mrs. Puff faces a crisis. SpongeBob has failed his driving test again, scoring only 6 points when he needs 600 to pass. This means another whole year teaching him, another year of crashes and disasters, another year of SpongeBob SquarePants in her classroom. Mrs. Puff realizes she needs a way out. She gives SpongeBob fraudulent extra credit to pass him. He just needs to write a 10-word sentence about what he learned in boating school. After an excruciating struggle where SpongeBob can barely complete the assignment, Mrs. Puff rips the paper, pretends it's sufficient, and declares, "You pass! You pass!" She hands him his license and drags him out the door before he can question whether he really earned it. Immediately, Mrs. Puff's conscience kicks in. She has visions of SpongeBob destroying Bikini Bottom, running over pedestrians, crashing through birthday parties, causing mass destruction. A news reporter in her vision blames this negligent, selfish driving instructor. Mrs. Puff realizes the consequences of what she's done. When SpongeBob's parents surprise her at home with a thank you party and reveal they've bought SpongeBob a brand new boatmobile, Mrs. Puff panics completely. She says to herself, "What have I done? Everyone will know that I let him slide through school. I'll have to move to a new city, start a new boating school with a new name? No, not again. Not again." Those two words reveal everything. Mrs. Puff has done this before. She's been in a situation bad enough that she had to flee Bikini Bottom, or wherever she was previously, relocate to a new city, and restart her teaching career under a new identity. This is an established pattern for her. When things go catastrophically wrong with her boating school, she runs away and starts over somewhere else with a new name. This suggests Mrs. Puff has fled from previous disasters multiple times. Not again implies at least one previous incident, possibly more. She's developed a standard escape plan. New city, new boating school, new name. She knows the drill. She's done this before when situations became untenable. But Mrs. Puff doesn't flee this time. Instead, she decides, "I've got to end this thing before it begins." She makes a choice that's completely out of character for a boating school instructor. She puts on a black ski mask, sneaks over to SpongeBob's house at night, breaks into his boat, and attempts to steal it. She's committing grand theft auto. She's become a criminal. When SpongeBob wakes up in the back of his own boat and confronts the masked figure, Mrs. Puff doesn't stop. She kicks him out of the moving vehicle. When he manages to grab onto the windshield, she deliberately drives through hazardous areas to shake him off. A field of giant clams, cheese graters, educational television. She's actively trying to harm, or at least seriously endanger, her student. SpongeBob and Mrs. Puff get into a physical brawl inside the moving boat. They fight violently while the vehicle goes completely out of control. The boat flies off a cliff and crashes into a police car. Mrs. Puff ends up arrested and jailed for her crimes. She calls SpongeBob from behind bars to apologize for fraudulently passing him. The episode establishes Mrs. Puff as someone willing to commit serious crimes when desperate enough. She fraudulently passes a student she knows is dangerous. She steals a vehicle. She endangers her student through reckless driving. She fights physically with SpongeBob. She destroys property, crashing into the police car. These are criminal acts that put her in jail. Yet Mrs. Puff is also portrayed as someone who has fled from bad situations before rather than confront them. Not Again suggests her pattern is escape and restart, not criminal action. When faced with disasters in the past, she apparently chose to run away and begin fresh somewhere else under a new identity. That's her established coping mechanism. These two responses to crisis don't align. Either Mrs. Puff's pattern is to flee when things go wrong, as Not Again suggests, or her pattern is to take drastic criminal action to fix the problem before fleeing becomes necessary. The episode wants her to be both, someone with a history of running away from disasters, and someone who commits felonies to prevent disasters. If Mrs. Puff has fled before from boating school catastrophes, why didn't she just flee again? Why choose this moment to become a car thief instead of following her established pattern of relocating and restarting? The Not Again line implies she's dealt with terrible situations in the past that forced her to flee. Whatever happened before was bad enough that she had to leave everything behind and assume a new identity. But nothing in this episode is worse than whatever happened before. SpongeBob failed his test, same as he's done many times. Mrs. Puff gave him fraudulent extra credit, which is unethical but not criminal. His parents bought him a boat. These circumstances, while worrying, don't seem catastrophic enough to justify either fleeing the city or committing grand theft auto. Mrs. Puff's previous disasters must have been severe enough to force complete relocation and identity change. Yet she never fled from SpongeBob before this episode, despite years of him failing tests, causing crashes, and destroying property. She stayed in Bikini Bottom teaching him repeatedly. Why was this the breaking point? Why did she choose crime over escape when escape is her established pattern? The show wants Mrs. Puff to have a dark past, implied by Not Again, to add weight to her desperation, but also wants her to take criminal action in this specific episode for the plot. These two aspects of her character pull in different directions. Someone who flees from problems doesn't usually become a car thief. Someone willing to steal vehicles and physically fight their students probably wouldn't run away from previous crises. Either Mrs. Puff is a career criminal who resorts to illegal acts when desperate, or she's someone who avoids confrontation by fleeing and restarting elsewhere. The episode shows both, but doesn't explain why she shifted strategies or what was different about her previous situations versus this one. Mrs. Puff's extremes and desperation make her look like a criminal mastermind, but the world of bubble blowing flips logic entirely in the next story. In episode Bubble Stand, SpongeBob sets up a business charging 25 cents to blow bubbles. Patrick walks up and asks to try. SpongeBob hands him the bubble wand, and Patrick inhales deeply and blows. Nothing happens. He pants, tries again, and still no bubble forms. After multiple failed attempts, SpongeBob puts up a sign advertising lessons. Bubble blowing isn't something Patrick can just do. It requires instruction. SpongeBob offers lessons for another 25 cents. He explains that bubble blowing is all about technique, then launches into an elaborate routine. He spins around, stops, does double takes, performs pelvic thrusts, stops on his right foot, brings it around town, and completes several more complex movements. The routine is lengthy, specific, and involves full-body choreography. Only after this complex routine can SpongeBob successfully blow bubbles. And they're not just any bubbles. He creates elaborate shapes: ducks, boxes, caterpillars, tugboats, elephants, butterflies. The technique enables artistic bubble creation. Patrick watches in amazement as SpongeBob demonstrates his mastery. Squidward overhears the commotion and comes out to investigate. When SpongeBob tries to explain they're making bubble art, Squidward scoffs at the idea. He picks up the bubble wand confidently, dismissing the concept that something as simple as bubble blowing could require payment or instruction. He questions why anyone would pay money for such a basic activity. Squidward inhales and blows. Nothing happens. He tries again. Still nothing. On his third attempt, a tiny bubble emerges and immediately falls to the ground, making a fart sound. Squidward's confidence evaporates. He keeps putting quarters on the stand, trying repeatedly, but he cannot blow a successful bubble. Every attempt results in failure or pathetic bubbles that fall and pop instantly. SpongeBob and Patrick try to help, repeatedly shouting about technique. They demonstrate the elaborate routine again, flailing around, doing pelvic thrusts, spinning, bringing it around town. Squidward watches them with an annoyed expression. They keep chanting about technique while standing on one foot and waving their arms wildly. Finally, Squidward gives in and performs the entire routine while mockingly imitating SpongeBob. He goes through every step, spinning, double takes, pelvic thrusts, stopping on his right foot, bringing it around town. Only after completing the full technique and screaming loudly into the wand does Squidward successfully blow a bubble. He creates a massive, misshapen bubble so powerful it lifts his entire house into the sky. The episode establishes clear rules. Bubble blowing requires technique. Patrick can't do it without lessons. Squidward can't do it without the technique despite his confidence that it's simple. The elaborate routine is the only way to successfully blow bubbles in this world. SpongeBob runs a legitimate business teaching this difficult skill. The episode dedicates significant time to showing how challenging bubble blowing is without proper training. In episode Bubble Buddy, SpongeBob wakes up disappointed that none of his friends can play with him. Patrick left a note saying he went to get supplies. Sandy went south for the winter. Squidward refuses to play. SpongeBob decides he needs to make himself a friend to play with. He tries several options: Stick Buddy, Rock Buddy, Sink Buddy. None of these work as companions. Then he gets an idea. He dips his bubble wand into bubble soap and blows a human-shaped bubble, which he names Bubble Buddy. He just dips the wand and blows. Instantly, he creates a perfect human-shaped bubble that maintains its form and structure throughout the entire episode. SpongeBob takes Bubble Buddy all over Bikini Bottom. They ride on a seesaw together. They visit the Krusty Krab, where Bubble Buddy supposedly orders an elaborate meal. They go to Goo Lagoon Beach. At no point does anyone comment that creating a living bubble is unusual or requires special technique. SpongeBob treats it as casually as making a sandwich. The bubble creation happens in seconds without any preparation or specialized movements. Later at the beach, Pearl has just met a famous surf celebrity and gotten her flipper dirty from shaking his hand. She's excited about this and declares she'll never wash that flipper again. SpongeBob approaches with Bubble Buddy and offers to have Pearl shake hands with his bubble friend. He rubs Bubble Buddy's bubble hands on Pearl's dirty flipper, which cleans it completely. Pearl breaks down sobbing because her special memento from meeting the celebrity is now gone. The moment reveals something crucial. Pearl herself demonstrates bubble blowing moments later. When the crowd discusses what they want to do with Bubble Buddy, Pearl blows a piece of bubble gum until it creates a bubble, then pops it to illustrate what should happen to SpongeBob's bubble friend. She creates the bubble casually, no technique required, just blows gum and makes a bubble instantly. Anyone can do it, apparently. At the end of the episode, when the angry mob surrounds SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy with needles ready to pop him, Bubble Buddy suddenly comes to life and speaks. He questions why he doesn't get a say in the matter, announces things are getting too weird, and declares he's leaving. Bubble Buddy then climbs into a bubble taxi and floats away into the distance. A bubble taxi, a vehicle made entirely of bubbles that exists as public transportation, implying bubble technology is common and accessible enough to support an entire industry. The inconsistency is glaring. Bubble Stand establishes that bubble blowing requires an elaborate, specific technique that must be taught through paid lessons. Patrick tries multiple times and cannot produce a single bubble. Squidward attempts it repeatedly and fails every time. Only after learning and performing the complete routine with all its specific movements can anyone successfully blow bubbles. The episode treats this as serious instruction for a genuinely difficult skill. Bubble Buddy shows SpongeBob blowing a perfect human-shaped bubble with no technique whatsoever. Just dip and blow, and instantly a complex bubble form appears. Pearl blows bubblegum casually, without any instruction or special movements. A bubble taxi exists, suggesting bubble creation is common enough to support an entire transportation industry with drivers and vehicles. No one struggles with the basic act of blowing bubbles. Bubbles are easy, accessible, and commonplace. Either bubble blowing is a difficult skill requiring specialized technique and professional instruction, or it's something anyone can do casually without training. Bubble Stand needed bubble blowing to be difficult so SpongeBob could teach it as a business and Squidward could fail humorously at something he assumed was simple. Bubble Buddy needed bubble creation to be easy so SpongeBob could quickly make a friend and the plot could progress without dwelling on technique or instruction. The show can't have both versions be true. If the technique from Bubble Stand is genuinely required for bubble blowing, then SpongeBob couldn't have casually blown Bubble Buddy into existence. Pearl couldn't have easily blown her gum bubble for demonstration purposes, and bubble taxis wouldn't exist as everyday transportation requiring constant bubble production. If bubble blowing is as easy as Bubble Buddy suggests, then Patrick and Squidward wouldn't have needed elaborate lessons with specific movements, and SpongeBob wouldn't have a legitimate business teaching people a skill they can apparently perform naturally. The routine in Bubble Stand shown as the basic requirement for any bubble blowing at all. Patrick and Squidward literally cannot produce bubbles without it. Yet Bubble Buddy treats bubble creation as something so simple and commonplace that it supports public transportation infrastructure, and children can do it with bubblegum without thinking twice. Bubble blowing is either a complex skill needing precise training or so simple anyone can do it, and the Krabby Patty formula is either priceless or worthless. Bikini Bottom refuses to be consistent. In episode Plankton, the entire plot revolves around protecting the Krabby Patty secret formula. Plankton infiltrates the Krusty Krab by hiding inside a dollar bill, knowing that Mr. Krabs would never distrust money. His goal is singular and obsessive: steal the secret formula. When he finally gets close to obtaining it, Mr. Krabs stops him and flushes him down the toilet. Plankton takes SpongeBob's brain hostage using a mind control device, forcing SpongeBob to bring a Krabby Patty to the chum bucket against his will. SpongeBob fights desperately to resist, physically struggling against his own controlled body. Even while being mind-controlled, SpongeBob declares his loyalty to Mr. Krabs and refuses to cooperate with the theft. The formula is precious, sacred, worth fighting for even when your own brain is working against you. Plankton has built an entire laboratory with an analyzer specifically designed to decode the secret formula. He's invested massive resources into this single goal. When SpongeBob delivers the Krabby Patty under mind control, Plankton celebrates like he's won the lottery. After years of failure, after countless schemes, he's finally going to discover what makes a Krabby Patty taste so good. The formula represents everything: success, wealth, power, victory over his rival. The episode treats the Krabby Patty formula as the most valuable thing in Bikini Bottom. It's kept in a safe. It's guarded constantly. Plankton's entire existence revolves around trying to steal it. Mr. Krabs would rather die than give it up. The formula is the foundation of the Krusty Krab's success, the reason customers choose it over the chum bucket, the secret that keeps Krabs wealthy and Plankton desperate. In episode Krusty Dogs, SpongeBob plays around with leftover Krabby Patty meat. He molds it into shapes: a top hat, Gary the Snail, a telephone. Then he shapes it into a hot dog form and cooks it. He brings the result to Mr. Krabs and announces that this hot dog tastes just like a Krabby Patty. Krabs isn't impressed until SpongeBob mentions he made it with leftover ingredients. Then Krabs becomes very interested. A customer notices the unusual shape and asks if it's for sale. Krabs immediately starts pricing it. He asks if the customer would pay the same as a Krabby Patty costs. When the customer agrees, Krabs doubles the price. The customer accepts enthusiastically. Other customers see this interaction and demand hot dogs too. They start chanting for them. Mr. Krabs climbs up to the menu board and writes Krusty Dogs on it, pricing them higher than Krabby Patties. The next day, orders for Krusty Dogs flood in. Krabs tells SpongeBob to forget about making Krabby Patties and just make hot dogs. SpongeBob is confused and concerned, asking about changes to the menu. Krabs grabs a ladder, climbs up, and crosses out Krabby Patties from the menu entirely. No more Krabby Patties, just Krusty Dogs. SpongeBob passes out from shock. When he wakes up, he discovers Krabs has thrown away the grill and replaced it with a small hot dog cooker. The entire kitchen has been reorganized around hot dog production. Later, when SpongeBob suggests going back to Krabby Patties because they gave the restaurant its name, Krabs responds by immediately changing the restaurant sign from the Krusty Krab to the Krusty Dogs. Here's the massive inconsistency. Krusty Dogs are made from Krabby Patty ingredients. SpongeBob explicitly states they taste just like a Krabby Patty. He creates them using the same meat, the same formula, just shaped differently and cooked in water instead of on a grill. These hot dogs contain the secret formula that Plankton has spent years trying to steal. The formula Krabs guards in a safe. The formula that represents the core value of the entire restaurant. Yet Krabs mass produces them, sells them to everyone, and makes them the restaurant's primary product. He's essentially distributing the secret formula to every customer who orders a Krusty Dog. Any food scientist could analyze a Krusty Dog and reverse engineer the Krabby Patty formula. Plankton could literally just buy one, take it to his analyzer, and finally discover the secret ingredients after years of elaborate schemes. The show wants the formula to be both priceless and worthless. In Plankton, the formula is so valuable that an entire episode revolves around protecting it from theft. Characters risk their lives, fight mind control, and dedicate their existence to either guarding or stealing it. The formula is the most important secret in Bikini Bottom, worth more than anything else. In Krusty Dogs, the formula is so unimportant that Krabs casually reshapes it into hot dogs and sells them to everyone without a second thought. He doesn't worry that he's giving away his secret. He doesn't consider that Plankton could simply purchase a Krusty Dog and analyze it. He doesn't care that the special formula that made him successful is now publicly available in slightly different form. Mr. Krabs' complete abandonment of the Krabby Patty makes no sense given how protective he is of the formula in other episodes. He spent years, possibly decades, building his reputation on Krabby Patties. The restaurant is named after them. His success comes from them. Plankton's entire villainy stems from wanting the Krabby Patty formula specifically. Yet, Krabs throws away the grill, crosses Krabby Patties off the menu, and renames his entire restaurant without hesitation. He acts like Krabby Patties are disposable, replaceable, unimportant. This is the same man who keeps the formula locked in a safe, who has thwarted thousands of Plankton's theft attempts, who would rather close his restaurant than give up the secret. The Krusty Dogs episode needed Krabs to completely replace Krabby Patties, so SpongeBob could feel sad and scheme to bring them back. The plot required Krabs to be so obsessed with profit that he'd abandon his signature item entirely. But this contradicts every other episode where the Krabby Patty formula is treated as sacred and irreplaceable. If Krusty Dogs taste exactly like Krabby Patties and use the same ingredients, then Plankton's entire quest becomes pointless. He could just buy a Krusty Dog, analyze it, and open his own hot dog restaurant serving the same product. The secret wouldn't be secret anymore. Yet the show continues treating the formula as mysterious and protected in future episodes, as if the Krusty Dogs episode never happened. Either the Krabby Patty formula is the most valuable secret in Bikini Bottom worth protecting at all costs, or it's so unimportant that Krabs will casually give it away in hot dog form to make slightly more profit. The show chose both versions depending on what each episode needed. Krabs guards a priceless secret one moment and gives it away the next, just as Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's powers change origin stories with every retelling. In episode Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, the show opens with footage from their television program. Young Mermaid Man flies through the water with full superpowers already active. The announcer describes his abilities. He can assemble and charge the creatures of the deep. A hammerhead shark attempts to eat fish, but Mermaid Man stops it using his powers. Young Barnacle Boy joins him, and they work together as an established superhero team. The two heroes each wear rings on their right hands. They strike these rings together, creating a powerful whirlpool aimed at their enemy Clamhead Candy Cad. The whirlpool is one of their signature moves, a devastating attack they can summon at will. Mermaid Man also throws a water ball at the screen. These are their established powers: whirlpool creation, water ball throwing, and the ability to command sea creatures. The opening sequence presents them as fully powered superheroes from the beginning. There's no origin story, no explanation of how they got their abilities. They simply exist as champions of the deep, with fantastic powers they use to fight evil. The show treats their abilities as standard superhero fare without needing justification or backstory. Later in the episode, when old Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy attempt to recreate their signature move, they try to unite their rings together. After several failed attempts at synchronizing, they finally succeed and create a whirlpool. The rings are the source of their whirlpool power. They've always had these rings, always had these abilities. It's presented as their natural superhero equipment. In episode Mermaid Man Begins, SpongeBob and Patrick want to watch the origin special that explains how Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy became superheroes. When the power goes out, they visit the Mermalair and ask the heroes directly about their origin. Mermaid Man begins telling his version of events. According to Mermaid Man's memory, he was a young man surfing on the beach when he fell asleep and was dragged into the ocean by a wave. A violent whirlpool pulled him under and he began drowning. Before he died, mermaids rescued him and took him to the ocean floor. The mermaids gave him a magic sea star that allowed him to breathe underwater. This magical sea star gave him his first power, underwater breathing. Mermaid Man then encountered a young Barnacle Boy, who was scraping barnacles off a ship's hull underwater. Fearing the boy would drown, Mermaid Man used his telekinetic powers to draw barnacles into Barnacle Boy's body, where they replaced his lungs, allowing him to breathe underwater too. They became a team because Barnacle Boy was now stuck breathing water for the rest of his life. This version establishes a completely different origin: magic from mermaids, not technology or mutations. The sea star grants underwater breathing. Telekinetic powers somehow exist to manipulate barnacles. No mention of rings, whirlpools, or water balls. The powers come from magical ocean creatures, not from any other source. But then the television turns on and plays the actual origin episode. An announcer named Johnny narrates the true story. Two roommates named Ernie and Tim were having movie night in their apartment. Tim asked for popcorn, and Ernie put it in the microwave. At that exact moment, a scientist in the apartment above knocked over radioactive ants. One ant crawled down and bit Ernie. He screamed and stumbled backward. The announcer continues with an increasingly absurd sequence. Both men fell through their floor and landed in a factory full of acid vats. They fell into an acid vat that was tipped over by an alien spaceship. The acid wave carried them during a solar eclipse on a leap year onto a bomb testing site. A cataclysmic explosion exposed them to toxic radium gases. Magical storm clouds zapped them with neon-plaid lightning and rained radioactive ooze. An earthquake in the jungle 2,000 miles away unearthed a magical crystal with wings that flew to their location. The crystal piloted them through the sky until it clipped a billboard, flinging them back to their apartment completely unharmed. Then the microwave beeped. The popcorn was ready. They ate the slightly overcooked popcorn, which triggered an amazing reaction, hitting them with cosmic super energy. This metamorphosed Ernie into an incredibly strong sea star wearing superhero and Tim into a slightly less strong sailor-looking guy. They suddenly had an urge to breathe water instead of air, so they dove into the ocean and became Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. The television origin is completely different from Mermaid Man's memory. No mermaids, magic sea star given by ocean creatures, or telekinetic barnacle manipulation. Instead, radioactive ants, acid vats, alien spaceships, bomb testing, toxic gases, magical lightning, radioactive ooze, flying crystals, and overcooked popcorn. A ridiculous chain of impossible coincidences that somehow gave them superpowers through absurd pseudoscience rather than ocean magic. The show presents 3 completely incompatible versions of how they became superheroes. The first episode shows them already having powers with no explanation needed, just established heroes with rings that create whirlpools. Mermaid Man's memory says mermaids rescued him and gave him a magic sea star that granted underwater breathing and telekinesis. The television origin episode says they were ordinary roommates who got superpowers from a chain of bizarre accidents culminating in eating overcooked popcorn. Either they got their powers from ocean magic, or from scientific accidents and cosmic energy, or they always had them from the start. The mermaid version is mystical and ancient. The television version is comic book pseudoscience. The first episode treats their powers as just existing without needing origin explanation. The rings that create whirlpools appear in the first episode as their standard equipment, but neither origin story in Mermaid Man Begins mentions these rings or explains where they came from. The mermaid story gives him a sea star. The popcorn story gives him generic super strength and water breathing. The show wants Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy to have both a mystical ocean-based origin and a silly comic book accident origin. It wants them to have mysterious ancient powers from magical creatures and ridiculous modern superpowers from radioactive popcorn. It wants their origin to be simple and unexplained, and also elaborately detailed with absurd specifics. All 3 versions can't be true simultaneously. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy have 3 mutually exclusive origin stories, just as SpongeBob swings between absolute job security and instant panic over imagined termination depending on the episode. In episode Can You Spare a Dime?, SpongeBob demonstrates extensive knowledge of Krusty Krab company policy. When Squidward complains about having to stay late, Mr. Krabs asks if one of their more loyal workers can enlighten him on company policy. SpongeBob responds by citing the employee manual with incredible specificity, referencing the exact edition, page number, section, and clause that requires all staff to remain on premises until receipts are accounted for. When Squidward protests this is unfair, SpongeBob cites another clause, stating the proprietor reserves the right to be unfair. This level of detail shows SpongeBob as a deeply embedded, permanent employee who has studied the company manual thoroughly. He knows the rules inside and out. He's not worried about his position or status. He's comfortable enough to quote policy back to management and other employees. This is someone who feels secure in their role. When Squidward quits after Mr. Krabs accuses him of stealing, SpongeBob gasps in horror and catches Squidward's falling hat with a pillow, treating it as a sacred object. He tells Squidward he's making a big mistake. When Squidward insists he's leaving, SpongeBob warns him it's a cold world out there where no one will serve happiness on a silver platter. He tells Squidward that if he ever gets in trouble, he should come find SpongeBob because he'll take care of him. SpongeBob even demonstrates they're connected like brothers, revealing their hearts are somehow beating in unison. Throughout the entire episode, SpongeBob remains employed at the Krusty Krab. He never worries about his own job security. When Squidward becomes homeless and moves in with him, SpongeBob continues working his regular shifts without any concern about being replaced or fired. At the end, when the misunderstanding about the stolen dime is resolved, Mr. Krabs rehires Squidward, and everything returns to normal. SpongeBob's position was never threatened or questioned. In episode Model Sponge, SpongeBob overhears Mr. Krabs on the phone saying he's going to have to let the little guy go today. SpongeBob immediately panics. He frantically tries to figure out who the little guy is by comparing his height to Squidward's. He makes himself taller and shorter, desperately hoping he's not the one being fired. When he realizes he might be the little guy, he becomes devastated. SpongeBob walks through the kitchen doors flattened and sad, saying goodbye to the Krusty Krab and goodbye to life as he knows it. He goes home and tells Gary he's lost the will to go on. When Patrick shows up, SpongeBob explains he lost his job today and won't be able to buy food for anyone anymore. He's convinced his employment has ended. SpongeBob immediately begins job hunting. He reads the classified ads looking for new employment. He tries working as a bank teller but fails when he chops up money with his spatula and forms it into a Krabby Patty shape. He tries working as a carpenter but fails when he builds a house shaped like a sandwich instead of following the blueprints. He eventually auditions to be a sponge model for a cleaning product commercial. At the commercial shoot, SpongeBob is asked to clean bathroom fixtures. When asked where his cleaning utensil is, the director explains that SpongeBob himself is the cleaning utensil. SpongeBob must clean sinks, showers, and toilets by using his own body as the scrubbing tool. When faced with cleaning a toilet from the inside, SpongeBob refuses and walks off set, declaring he's not cut out for acting and that he's always been a fry cook. SpongeBob returns to the Krusty Krab crying and begging Mr. Krabs to let him back. He hugs Krabs and pleads desperately, saying he heard Krabs was going to let the little guy go, but he doesn't want to go. Mr. Krabs seems confused about what SpongeBob is talking about, eventually agreeing not to get rid of him on one condition. The episode ends with SpongeBob happily cleaning toilets at the Krusty Krab. The reveal is that Mr. Krabs was never talking about firing SpongeBob. He was talking about releasing a pet scallop that had grown too big for its cage. SpongeBob completely misunderstood the conversation and assumed he was being fired based on overhearing a few vague words. The inconsistency is stark. In one episode, SpongeBob is so secure in his employment that he can cite company policy by heart, including specific manual sections and clauses. He's comfortable enough to correct management and other employees about the rules. He never worries about his own job status even when a coworker quits dramatically. His position is rock solid and permanent. In the other episode, SpongeBob immediately assumes he's been fired from overhearing a single ambiguous phone conversation. He doesn't ask for clarification. He doesn't talk to Mr. Krabs directly. He just leaves, convinced his employment has ended, and starts looking for new work. When he returns, he's desperate and begging, acting like someone with no job security who could be terminated at any moment. Either SpongeBob is a permanent, secure employee who knows all the policies and never worries about being fired, or he's so insecure about his position that he'll assume he's been terminated based on misunderstanding a vague comment. The show chose both versions depending on what each episode needed. Can You Spare a Dime? Needed SpongeBob to be stable and employed so Squidward's unemployment could be the focus. Model Sponge needed SpongeBob to think he was fired so he could explore other jobs and ultimately reaffirm his identity as a fry cook. SpongeBob swings between job security and instant panic, just as Gary alternates between being a royal heir and an ordinary pet, showing the show reshapes character status entirely to fit each story's needs. And if you enjoyed our content, subscribe to our channel. In episode Rule of Dumb, a representative from the royal ministry arrives at Patrick's rock. He brings news that Patrick is descended from royalty and presents him with a crown. The starfish shows Patrick a family tree going back centuries, starting with King Amoeba and Queen Mildew, and through various generations ending at Patrick. This makes Patrick the king of Bikini Bottom. Patrick quickly abuses his power, taking things from citizens, demanding free food, and generally acting like a tyrant. He builds a Ferris wheel in Squidward's yard and moves Squidward's house out of the way. Eventually, Patrick becomes so terrible that even his best friend SpongeBob tells him he's being a jerk. Patrick looks in a mirror and sees himself as a monster, realizing what he's become. The Royal Ministry starfish returns with important news. He's discovered a coffee stain on the family history document. Upon removing the stain, new information is revealed. Patrick is not the true heir to the crown after all. The document shows that Sir Gary is the actual heir to the king's crown. Gary is descended from the royal line, making him the rightful king. The episode ends with Gary having a crown placed on his head. SpongeBob and Patrick dress in medieval clothes to honor their new king. SpongeBob excitedly tells Gary that he's royalty. Gary meows contentedly, now recognized as the legitimate heir to the royal throne. His royal bloodline has been officially confirmed and documented by the royal ministry. In episode Have You Seen This Snail?, SpongeBob receives a paddle ball set in the mail. He becomes obsessed with completing the Dirty Bubble Challenge, which requires hitting the paddle ball an absurd number of times in a row. He spends days attempting this challenge, forgetting everything else around him, including his responsibilities. Gary goes to his food bowl and finds it completely empty. He tries to get SpongeBob's attention, but SpongeBob is too focused on the paddle ball to notice. Gary keeps meowing, trying to remind SpongeBob about feeding time, but SpongeBob dismisses him repeatedly. When Gary becomes more insistent, SpongeBob tells him to leave so he can focus on his important challenge. Gary checks his bowl again and finds only a crumb with spiders crawling on it. Hungry and neglected, Gary packs his belongings and leaves home. He rides away on a raft, takes a bus out of town, and begins wandering as a homeless snail. Eventually, an elderly woman named Grandma mistakes him for her lost pet Miss Tuftsy and takes him in, feeding him constantly. SpongeBob eventually realizes Gary has been gone for over a week. He searches everywhere for his pet, finding a note Gary left, explaining he's gone to find a new owner who actually remembers to feed him. SpongeBob is devastated. He creates missing posters, flies an airplane with a message in the sky, and puts up billboards trying to find Gary. The entire episode treats Gary as SpongeBob's regular pet with a normal pet-owner relationship. There's no mention of Gary being royalty. No one refers to him as Sir Gary or treats him with any special status. When SpongeBob finally reunites with Gary at the end, he promises things will be different and that he won't neglect him again. It's a straightforward story about a pet running away because his owner forgot to feed him. The inconsistency is clear. Either Gary is descended from royalty with an official lineage documented by the royal ministry, making him the rightful king of Bikini Bottom, or he's SpongeBob's ordinary pet snail with no special heritage or royal status. If Gary is truly the heir to the throne, as established in Rule of Dumb, then his treatment in Have You Seen This Snail makes no sense. Why would the king of Bikini Bottom be living in SpongeBob's pineapple as a regular pet? Why would no one recognize or acknowledge his royal status? Why would Gary run away over something as mundane as not being fed, when he could presumably command anything he wants as king? The royal ministry officially confirmed Gary's lineage by removing the coffee stain and revealing the truth on the family tree document. This wasn't a joke or misunderstanding. The starfish specifically came back to correct the error about Patrick and crown the true heir. Yet this significant fact about Gary's identity never appears again or affects any future episodes. The show wants Gary to be both a royal heir with documented noble lineage and an ordinary pet snail with no special status. Rule of Dumb needed Gary to be the surprise twist ending where the true king is revealed. Have You Seen This Snail? Needed Gary to be a regular neglected pet for its runaway story to work. These two versions of Gary's identity cannot coexist on the same timeline. Gary's royal claim proves nothing when the real test of loyalty and ambition lands squarely in Plankton's hands. In episode Plankton's Army, Mr. Krabs gathers his crew for an important announcement. Today marks a special occasion, the 25th anniversary of the first time me archenemy Plankton ever tried to steal me secret Krabby Patty formula. 25 years ago, on this very day, Plankton made his initial move to obtain the recipe. Mr. Krabs is so proud of this milestone that he's turned it into an annual tradition, a day to remember when his rivalry with Plankton officially began. The episode shows a flashback to that first attempt. Young Plankton approaches young Mr. Krabs at a table. Plankton asks directly, "Can I have the secret formula?" Mr. Krabs responds with a flat no. Plankton accepts this sadly and walks away saying, "Okay." Then he immediately comes back and tries again. "Pretty please?" Krabs shuts him down with This flashback establishes the dynamic. Krabs has the secret formula. Plankton wants it, and Plankton has been trying to get it for 25 years. The language in this flashback is crucial. Plankton asks for the secret formula as if it's an established thing that exists. He's asking for the secret formula, a specific item that Mr. Krabs possesses. Krabs responds by refusing to give it to him, confirming that yes, he has this formula, and no, Plankton cannot have it. This was the beginning of their rivalry. The episode continues showing Plankton's escalating attempts over 25 years. Disguises, super science, civil disobedience. Every method fails. Mr. Krabs always comes out on top because he guards the secret formula carefully. The entire premise rests on the idea that from day one, Krabs had something Plankton wanted, and Plankton has spent a quarter century trying to steal it. In episode Friend or Foe, the origin story of the Krabby Patty formula gets told through multiple perspectives. Mr. Krabs tells his version, Plankton tells his version, and finally Karen reveals the truth from her security footage. All three versions agree on the basic timeline. Krabs and Plankton were best friends born on the same day. They grew up together, got bullied together, and eventually decided to open a restaurant together. The restaurant wasn't called the Krusty Krab. They ran it together as partners, serving burgers they created from scratch. Karen's footage shows them working at a dump, experimenting with ingredients, taking careful notes of their progress. They finally emerged with the best-looking burger under the sea. This was their joint creation. They made it together. Neither one had a secret formula before this moment because the formula didn't exist yet. Their partnership fell apart when they disagreed about how to use the recipe. The formula literally tears in half during their fight. Krabs gets one half, Plankton gets the other half. After the split, Karen's footage shows young Krabs discovering the perfected recipe by accident when Plankton slams a door, causing jars to spill into the cooking pot. Krabs tastes the new mixture and declares, "I've done it! I've discovered the perfect patty batter." Right then, that moment, that's when the Krabby Patty formula was finalized. After discovering the perfected formula, Krabs opened the Krusty Krab. Plankton opened the Chum Bucket. They became rivals. Kids at their school tried both burgers, and everyone preferred Krabs' Krabby Patties over Plankton's Chum Burgers. Plankton screams, "I'll show you, Krabs, I'll steal that cursed recipe from you one day, and I won't stop till I do." That's when the rivalry began. That's when Plankton started his quest to steal the formula. But here's the problem. Friend or Foe shows that the Krabby Patty formula only came into existence after Krabs and Plankton split up. The perfected recipe was created when Krabs accidentally spilled ingredients into a pot following their argument. Before that moment, there was no secret formula to steal. There was just their joint recipe that got torn in half. Plankton couldn't have been asking Krabs for the secret formula 25 years ago because the secret formula hadn't been invented yet. The Plankton's Army flashback shows young Plankton asking young Krabs, "Can I have the secret formula?" As if they were never partners. As if Krabs always had this formula, and Plankton was always an outsider trying to get it. The power dynamic is clear. Krabs owns something. Plankton wants it. Krabs refuses. This is presented as the first time Plankton ever tried to obtain the formula, the moment their rivalry began. Friend or Foe shows they were best friends who created a recipe together, split up over disagreements about that recipe, and only then did Krabs perfect it into the Krabby Patty formula. The rivalry began when Plankton saw kids choosing Krabs burgers over his and vowed to steal the recipe. That's the origin of their conflict. Former partners turned competitors, with Plankton trying to reclaim what he sees as partially his creation. These are fundamentally different origin stories. One has Plankton as an outsider who has always wanted Krabs' secret formula, asking politely at first before escalating to increasingly elaborate theft attempts. The other has Plankton as Krabs' former best friend and business partner who helped create the original recipe before they split, and Krabs perfected it alone. One shows rivalry from the beginning. The other shows friendship that turned into rivalry. The 25-year timeline in Plankton's Army doesn't even necessarily work with Friend or Foe. If Plankton has been trying to steal the formula for 25 years, and the formula was only created when Krabs and Plankton were teenagers or young adults running their joint restaurant, then the current timeline has them in their 40s or 50s. Krabs acts old enough for that, but the Friend or Foe flashbacks show them as kids in school being bullied, then older opening a restaurant, then splitting up. The aging doesn't quite track with Plankton spending 25 years attempting theft. The show wants Plankton to be both the lifelong outsider who has always coveted Krabs' secret and the former best friend who was betrayed after they created something together. Plankton's Army needed a simple villain origin. Plankton asks for formula. Krabs says no, rivalry begins. Friend or Foe needed a complex friendship to rivalry arc with shared history and a recipe they invented together before their falling out. Plankton asking, "Can I have the secret formula?" implies he was never part of its creation. The formula existed, Krabs had it, Plankton wanted it, but Friend or Foe explicitly shows Plankton was part of the creation process. They made the original burger together. The formula became secret only after Krabs perfected it alone following their split. Plankton wouldn't ask for something that didn't exist yet, and he wouldn't phrase it as, "Can I have the secret formula?" if he'd been Krabs' partner in creating the predecessor recipe. Either Plankton has been an outsider trying to steal Krabs' formula for 25 years, or he was Krabs' best friend and business partner, who helped create the original recipe before they split and became rivals. The show picked both versions depending on which episode needed what kind of backstory. Plankton's obsession with the formula seems endless, but Mr. Krabs' hidden past might rewrite everything we thought we knew about his rise to power. In episode Shell of a Man, Mr. Krabs digs up a treasure chest from his hiding spot and explains its significance to SpongeBob. "It's me memory chest from my years in the Navy." Years. Plural. Not a brief stint, not a weekend warrior situation, but multiple years of dedicated military service. He's pulling out memorabilia from a substantial portion of his life spent serving in the armed forces. The chest contains his first tattoo, his manly toughness trophy won by being the toughest of the tough, and his Navy cadet uniform. SpongeBob asks about a photograph showing 5 sailors, and Mr. Krabs proudly identifies them. Old Iron Eye, Mutton Chop, himself, Torpedo Belly, and Lockjaw Jones. These were his shipmates, the toughest bunch to ever sail the briny deep. He earned the nickname Armor Abs Krabs for his legendary abdominal strength. The episode centers around Mr. Krabs' Navy reunion, an event where all his old military buddies gather to reminisce and award the trophy of manly toughness. These aren't casual acquaintances. These are men who served together, fought together, and formed bonds strong enough to maintain reunions years later. Mr. Krabs is so invested in this reunion that he's devastated when he molts his shell and fears his Navy buddies won't recognize him as the tough guy they remember. The Navy clearly represents a significant chapter of Mr. Krabs' life. He spent enough time in military service to form lasting friendships, earn trophies, develop a fearsome reputation for toughness, and accumulate enough memories to fill a treasure chest. His uniform still fits, sort of, suggesting this wasn't ancient history. His Navy buddies remember him well enough to give him awards and expect him to show up to reunions. This is real military service with real time invested. In episode Friend or Foe, the show provides a comprehensive timeline of Mr. Krabs' early life through extensive flashbacks. We see him and Plankton born on the same day, November 30th, 1942. We watch them grow up together as best friends. The flashback shows them as toddlers celebrating their 3rd birthday. We see them in elementary school at Poseidon Elementary, getting bullied by kids who mock Krabs for wearing clothes made from rags. The timeline continues with young Krabs and Plankton walking through carnival grounds. Krabs discovers money for the first time by finding a penny on the ground. This discovery changes his life. He buys Plankton a balloon with his first dollar, demonstrating their close friendship. The flashback then shows them deciding to open a restaurant together, converting a trailer at the dump into their joint business venture. Young adult Krabs and Plankton work together, creating their burger recipe. They experiment at the dump, taking careful notes, emerging with their best attempt at a good burger. They open their restaurant together. Karen's security footage shows all of this happening in sequence. Childhood friendship, school years, discovering money, opening restaurant together, Old Man Jenkins getting poisoned by their burger, the recipe argument, the split. After the split, Krabs discovers the perfected Krabby Patty recipe and opens the Krusty Krab. Plankton opens the Chum Bucket. Kids at school choose Krabs burgers over Plankton's, establishing Krabs as the successful restaurateur. This is where adult Mr. Krabs begins, running the Krusty Krab, guarding his secret formula, and fending off Plankton's theft attempts. The Friend or Foe timeline is thorough and detailed, showing Krabs' progression from baby to child to teenager to young adult restaurant owner. It covers his entire youth and early adulthood. At no point does anyone mention the Navy. At no point does young Krabs leave to serve in the military. Or is there a gap in the timeline where he could spend years in the Navy serving with Torpedo Belly and Lockjaw Jones? The flashback shows Krabs going directly from being a poor kid wearing rag clothes to discovering money to opening a restaurant with Plankton. His young adult years are accounted for. He was working at the dump, experimenting with burger recipes, running a restaurant with his best friend, then opening the Krusty Krab after their split. Where in this timeline did he serve multiple years in the military? Shell of a Man establishes that Mr. Krabs spent significant time in the Navy. Enough time to earn nicknames, win trophies, form deep friendships with shipmates, and accumulate years of service worth commemorating with reunions. This isn't something that happens during a summer break or a brief enlistment. The Navy was clearly a major part of his life. But Friend or Foe shows every major period of Krabs' youth. His childhood with Plankton, his school years being bullied, his discovery of money, his partnership with Plankton opening a restaurant, their split, and his opening of the Krusty Krab. The episode is specifically designed to explain the origin of their rivalry and the creation of the Krabby Patty formula. It covers the relevant years of Krabs' life in detail. Navy service would be relevant. It would explain where Krabs developed his toughness, his discipline, his leadership skills, but it's never mentioned. Krabs' Navy buddies remember him as Armor Abs Krabs, a legendary figure known for his physical toughness. This reputation takes time to build. You don't earn nicknames like Armor Abs during basic training. You earn them through years of service, through multiple deployments, through consistent demonstration of your abilities. Krabs spent enough time with these men that they formed a brotherhood strong enough to last into their current lives. The Friend or Foe flashbacks show young Krabs as a poor kid, wearing clothes made from Old Man Jenkins' washcloth, getting bullied at school, discovering his first penny with wonder and excitement. This kid goes on to open a restaurant with Plankton while still young enough that they're serving school kids as their customer base. When did he take a break from poverty and restaurant ownership to spend years in military service? The show needs Mr. Krabs to have both a Navy background for Shell of a Man and to explain his seafaring personality and toughness, and a lifelong connection to Plankton for Friend or Foe and their origin story. These two histories don't fit together on the same timeline. Either Krabs spent years in the Navy developing his Armor Abs reputation, or he spent his young adult years working with Plankton at their joint restaurant before opening the Krusty Krab. Maybe Krabs served in the Navy before meeting Plankton as a baby, which is impossible. Maybe he served after opening the Krusty Krab, which contradicts the years in the Navy and the young appearance of his Navy buddies in the photo. Maybe he served during his childhood while also going to school with Plankton, which makes no sense. The timeline has no room for multiple years of military service. Shell of a Man treats Krabs' Navy service as foundational to his identity. His toughness, his manly reputation, his leadership abilities all come from his time serving with the toughest bunch to ever sail the briny deep. Friend or Foe treats his partnership with Plankton as foundational to his identity. His business, his secret formula, his rivalry, his success all come from his time working with and then competing against his former best friend. Both episodes position their respective backstories as the defining period of young Krabs' life, but they can't both be true simultaneously on the same timeline. Mr. Krabs' legendary Navy years show a life of discipline and toughness, but SpongeBob's timeless childhood proves that Bikini Bottom refuses to let time pass normally. In episode No Free Rides, SpongeBob is taking his driving test at boating school. The narrator explains this is the last test for the year, and if SpongeBob doesn't pass, it means another whole year of boating school. Mrs. Puff is desperate to pass him, so she doesn't have to teach him for another year. She gives him fraudulent extra credit, requiring him to write a 10-word sentence about what he learned. After an agonizing struggle where SpongeBob can barely complete the assignment, Mrs. Puff tears the paper, pretends it's acceptable, and declares that he passes. She hands him his driver's license and drags him out the door. SpongeBob celebrates getting his license, licking it and declaring it tastes just like he dreamed it would. The driver's license represents a legal age requirement. In the real world, and presumably in Bikini Bottom, you must reach a certain age before you're allowed to operate a vehicle. Boating school exists specifically to train students who have reached that minimum age threshold. The fact that SpongeBob has been attending for years, repeatedly failing and having to retake classes, suggests he's been of legal driving age for quite some time. Each year he fails adds another year to his age. Later, SpongeBob's parents surprise Mrs. Puff at her home with a thank you party. They present her with a cake, thanking her for being the greatest teacher. Harold expresses gratitude, saying they were starting to think SpongeBob would never get his license. He praises Mrs. Puff for never giving up, never quitting, and never taking the easy way out. This indicates SpongeBob has been pursuing his license for so long that even his parents had doubts about whether he'd ever achieve it. Then they reveal the big surprise, a brand new boatmobile with the license plate reading IMRDY. SpongeBob faints from excitement. His parents drive off with him unconscious in the back seat, saying he'll be driving by tomorrow. Getting his driver's license is treated as a major life milestone, something he's been working toward for years, a coming-of-age achievement that marks him reaching the appropriate age to drive. It's comparable to a teenager finally getting their driver's license after turning 16, a major step toward adulthood and independence. The episode's entire plot hinges on SpongeBob finally reaching this adult milestone. Mrs. Puff is willing to commit fraud because she can't bear another year teaching someone who should have graduated long ago. The celebration with cake, presents, and a new vehicle all emphasize this as a significant life achievement that recognizes SpongeBob's maturity and readiness for adult responsibilities. In episode Waiting, SpongeBob discovers that a cereal box offers a free toy prize if you send in 99 box tops. He eats massive amounts of cereal with Gary, collects the box tops, mails them in, and then waits by his mailbox for the toy to arrive. He becomes obsessed with waiting, refusing to leave the mailbox even when hungry or when friends want to spend time with him. Patrick shows up after SpongeBob has been waiting for a while. Patrick seems concerned and says he has something important to tell SpongeBob. He reveals that SpongeBob missed his surprise birthday party. Patrick brought him a present and some birthday cake because he missed the celebration. SpongeBob becomes emotional, asking in disbelief if he really missed his birthday party. Patrick confirms he did miss it and shows the present and cake. When Patrick accidentally eats the cake while trying to find a fork, SpongeBob is disappointed. When the present turns out to just be the fork, SpongeBob breaks down crying. He's devastated that he wasted his time waiting for a toy instead of attending his own birthday party. The episode treats this as just another birthday, not a particularly special or milestone birthday. There's no mention of his age, no candles showing a number, no discussion of how old he's turning. The birthday is presented as just another annual event, something that happens regularly without any significance beyond having a party with friends. SpongeBob's behavior throughout the episode is extremely childish. He obsesses over a free toy from a cereal box, the kind of prize that typically appeals to young children. He camps out by his mailbox like a kid waiting for Christmas morning. He cries when the toy breaks. Nothing about his behavior suggests the maturity of someone who holds a driver's license and works a full-time job. The inconsistency is about aging and time passing. In No Free Rides, getting his driver's license is a major achievement that presumably requires SpongeBob to be a certain age. Boating school has age requirements for licensing. Mrs. Puff has been teaching him for years, and finally passing represents him reaching driving age. His parents treat it as a huge milestone worthy of buying him an expensive new vehicle. This episode positions SpongeBob as someone who has aged into adulthood, finally achieving what teenagers typically accomplish. But in Waiting, which aired years later in the show's run, SpongeBob has another birthday, and this isn't treated as unusual or special. It's just another birthday party he happened to miss. The episode doesn't mention his age, doesn't treat him as any more mature than before, and doesn't reference his driver's license or any growing up that happened previously. He behaves exactly like a child excited about a toy prize, with no indication that years have passed since his license achievement. Throughout the series, SpongeBob celebrates multiple birthdays across various episodes, yet he never ages. He remains the same childlike character with the same level of maturity, the same job at the Krusty Krab, the same living situation with Gary. His personality doesn't evolve. His responsibilities don't increase. His appearance doesn't change. He doesn't develop adult concerns or interests beyond what he had in early seasons. If birthdays keep happening but he never gets older, then either time doesn't pass normally in Bikini Bottom, or birthdays are meaningless markers that don't correspond to actual aging. But if birthdays don't indicate aging, then the driver's license milestone makes no sense. You can't have SpongeBob old enough to legally drive while simultaneously having him remain perpetually the same age, despite celebrating multiple birthdays over the course of the series. The show wants SpongeBob to have milestone achievements like getting his driver's license that require him to be old enough for adult responsibilities, while also having him celebrate birthdays repeatedly without ever maturing or changing. No free rides needed him to finally reach driving age after years of trying. Waiting needed him to have a birthday so he could miss his party while obsessing over the toy. But these two concepts don't fit together logically on a consistent timeline. The driver's license episode treats age and maturity as important factors. You must be old enough to drive. You must pass tests and demonstrate competency. Years of classes matter because they represent time passing and age increasing. SpongeBob finally achieving this goal means he's finally reached the necessary age and maturity level, even if Mrs. Puff cheated to make it happen. But birthday episodes treat age as irrelevant. SpongeBob can have birthday after birthday without any of them meaning anything in terms of his actual age or development. He doesn't get a year older each time. He doesn't gain wisdom or maturity. He doesn't face new age-appropriate challenges. The birthdays exist only as plot devices for party-themed episodes, not as markers of genuine aging. Either SpongeBob ages with each birthday and should be noticeably older and more mature in later seasons, or birthdays happen without aging, and his driver's license achievement makes no sense as an age-based milestone. The show chose both versions depending on what each episode needed. It wants the emotional weight of aging milestones, like getting a license, while maintaining the frozen-in-time status quo, where SpongeBob never actually grows up. SpongeBob's endless birthdays clash with his driver's license milestone, just as Squidward's ultimate triumph mysteriously vanishes in his later memories. Bikini Bottom refuses to play by consistent rules. And remember to subscribe to our channel for more videos like these. Now let's back to the video. In episode Band Geeks, Squidward receives a phone call from his wealthy rival Squilliam Fancison, who was in band class with him years ago. Squilliam brags about leading a big fancy band that's supposed to play the Bubble Bowl next week. He mockingly says he's living Squidward's dreams. When Squilliam reveals he can't make the performance and asks if Squidward's band could cover, Squidward panics because he doesn't have a band. Rather than admit this to his rival, Squidward lies. He declares that he doesn't sell fast food, he does have a band, and they're going to play the Bubble Bowl. Squilliam wishes him good luck with thinly veiled sarcasm. After hanging up, Squidward realizes he needs to assemble a marching band immediately. He puts up posters around Bikini Bottom advertising the opportunity. The band practices are catastrophic. Nobody can play their instruments properly. The brass section plays badly. The wind section plays badly. The drummers misunderstand instructions entirely. Flag twirlers spin so hard they fly into the sky and crash into a blimp, causing an explosion that kills all three. Plankton can barely play his harmonica solo. When they try playing loudly, the windows blow out. When they try playing quietly, a fight breaks out. Band members use their instruments as weapons. Mr. Krabs and Harold argue about meaty claws. Everyone attacks each other with drums, cymbals, and woodwinds. Sandy chases Patrick with a trumpet. The chaos continues until the clock shows practice is over. Squidward has an emotional breakdown. He tells them they took his one chance at happiness and crushed it into little, tiny, bite-sized pieces. Crying, he says he expected better of them and calls himself a loser. He tells them not to bother showing up the next day because he'll just say they all died in a marching accident. SpongeBob rallies the band members, convincing them to show up for Squidward. They arrive at the Bubble Bowl just as Squidward is making excuses to Squilliam about why his band isn't there. Squilliam laughs at Squidward, assuming his ragtag group will be terrible. Squidward nervously counts off to begin the performance, bracing himself for humiliation. But something miraculous happens. The band is incredible. They perform Sweet Victory perfectly. SpongeBob sings powerfully. Patrick plays drums. Sandy rocks on electric guitar. The horn section nails every note. The crowd of live-action people cheers wildly. Squidward's eyes widen in shock at how good they sound. He stops using his baton and conducts with his arms, completely absorbed in the triumphant music. Squilliam stares in utter disbelief. His face shows shock and horror as he realizes Squidward's band is genuinely excellent. Squidward gives him a smug grin. Squilliam has a heart attack and faints, getting carried away on stretchers. Squidward waves a smug goodbye to his rival and runs to center stage. As the final notes ring out, Squidward jumps into the air in celebration. The image freezes on his victorious leap, ending the episode on his moment of absolute triumph. This is Squidward's greatest achievement in the entire series. He defeated his wealthy, successful rival. He proved himself capable. His band was spectacular in front of a massive audience. Squilliam literally collapsed from the shock. Everything Squidward ever wanted, recognition, respect, artistic success, and victory over someone who looked down on him, happened in this single, perfect moment. In episode Are You Happy Now?, SpongeBob is at work looking through his Happy Book, the Krusty Krab work schedule where all his happiest memories occurred. He keeps laughing and gasping at the pages. Squidward gets annoyed and asks what's so great about it. When SpongeBob explains it contains his happiest memories, Squidward burns the book. SpongeBob reveals he has a whole cabinet of backup copies. SpongeBob then asks Squidward what his happiest memory is. Squidward tries to think. His thought bubble appears, showing only TV static that zooms in. Then it cuts to color bars. The thought bubble disappears. Squidward sighs and says he guesses he doesn't have a happiest memory. He starts to walk away casually, but SpongeBob is horrified. He asks how Squidward can live without a happiest memory and whether he cries himself to sleep at night. When a customer tries to order, Squidward bursts into tears, bawling hysterically. SpongeBob comforts him, and Squidward confirms crying that SpongeBob is right. He doesn't have a happy memory and it's horrible. SpongeBob promises to help him make a happiest memory. Squidward, still crying, agrees to let him try. SpongeBob takes Squidward to a concert, but a violin bow launches into Squidward's eye. At an art museum, Squidward discovers his sculpture is on display and gets excited, thinking this might be his happiest memory. But then a performance artist named Fiasco burns the sculpture with a flamethrower. They try a hot air balloon, but Squidward is afraid of heights and they crash. They reach the top of a mountain, but an avalanche carries them down. After all these failures, Squidward tells SpongeBob that he'll never have a happiest memory, and if he does, it definitely won't involve SpongeBob. He goes home and lies in bed, saying he might as well sleep for 100 years or so. He tells himself to wake him when he's dead. He rolls under his bed and stays there. 2 weeks pass. SpongeBob notices Squidward hasn't come out of his house. He tries calling and knocking, but gets no response. Squidward throws his phone out the window. Inside, Squidward takes burned brownies out of the oven and says that didn't help. He opens his oven, apparently looking for something to make himself happy. He grabs a rope and swings it over something, saying maybe this will help. He pulls on the rope to reveal a scallop in a cage, but it sprays liquid at him and flies away. Squidward becomes increasingly isolated and despondent. When SpongeBob manages to reach him through a fax machine, Squidward shreds him and dumps him out the window. Eventually, SpongeBob tricks Squidward into coming to the Krusty Krab by mailing him an empty box and hiding inside it. SpongeBob throws a surprise party with papier-mâché versions of himself filling the room. Squidward snaps. He screams that he doesn't want a happiest memory. Angry skulls appear in his eyes. He goes completely berserk, destroying the cake, ripping apart the papier-mâché SpongeBobs, sawing them apart, crawling on the ceiling, swinging from a banner like Tarzan, and kicking decorations everywhere. He laughs maniacally while destroying everything. Finally, he declares that this destruction is his happiest memory, violently demolishing SpongeBob-themed party decorations. The inconsistency is glaring. Band Geeks showed Squidward experiencing the single greatest triumph of his life. He assembled a band, overcame impossible odds, performed spectacularly in front of thousands of people, and watched his wealthy rival collapse from shock at how good they were. This moment combined artistic success, public recognition, personal vindication, and victory over someone who had mocked him for years. It was everything Squidward ever dreamed about. Yet in Are You Happy Now?, this memory doesn't exist. When asked about his happiest memory, Squidward's mind is completely blank. He has no happy memories at all. The Band Geeks' triumph, which should be the obvious and immediate answer to SpongeBob's question, has apparently been erased from Squidward's memory entirely. His thought bubble shows only static and color bars. Nothing. No recollection of the Bubble Bowl, no memory of defeating Squilliam, no trace of that perfect moment. The episode establishes that Squidward has been so chronically unhappy for so long that he's reached a crisis point. He can't remember ever being truly happy. He becomes deeply depressed about this lack of happy memories. He isolates himself for weeks. He contemplates various desperate measures to find happiness. Yet the Band Geeks' performance, A1 Setter, which the audience saw as his greatest achievement, somehow doesn't count or doesn't exist in his memory. Even more strangely, Squidward's happiest memory at the end of Are You Happy Now? Is destroying papier-mâché SpongeBobs at a party. This violent, destructive outburst becomes his peak happiness, but it's objectively worse than the Band Geeks' triumph. Destroying party decorations in a manic rage is less satisfying than performing perfect music while your rival has a heart attack from jealousy. Yet the show treats the party destruction as Squidward's first and only happy memory. Either Squidward had a genuine triumph at the Bubble Bowl that should be his treasured happiest memory, or he's lived such a miserable existence that he has no happy memories at all, and finds his only joy in destruction. Band Geeks gave him everything he wanted. Are you happy now? Says he's never had anything he wanted. Both cannot be true simultaneously on the same timeline. The show wanted to tell a triumphant underdog story where Squidward defeats his rival through an amazing performance, and it also wanted to tell a dark story about someone so chronically depressed they can't remember being happy. These two narratives directly contradict each other when Squidward's blank thought bubble erases one of the most triumphant moments in the entire series. Squidward's greatest triumph disappears from memory, just as Mr. Krabs proves he'll risk everything for a gamble. In episode Krabs a la mode, it's a cold and windy day in Bikini Bottom. Inside the Krusty Krab, Squidward complains that he's freezing. SpongeBob suggests exercising to stay warm, but Squidward looks at the thermostat and sees it's set to only 62 degrees. He decides to turn it up to a toasty 63 degrees. The moment he touches the dial, an alarm blares throughout the restaurant. Mr. Krabs hears the alarm, bursts through his office door, and furiously yells asking who touched his thermostat. Everyone, including SpongeBob, points at Squidward. Mr. Krabs angrily grabs Squidward by the nose and forces him to read the sign above the thermostat. Do not touch thermostat ever. He puts the temperature back to 62 degrees and explains that heat costs money. Mr. Krabs tells them there are two ways to get on his bad side. He doesn't like kids playing in his yard, and nobody but him touches his thermostat. When Squidward calls this selfish, SpongeBob agrees, saying the yard is really fun. Mr. Krabs sees kids playing in his yard and runs out screaming at them to get off his lawn. His obsession with the thermostat and cost control is absolute. Later, Plankton sneaks into the closed Krusty Krab at night and turns down the thermostat to negative 15 degrees, deliberately freezing the entire restaurant. The next morning, the whole place is frozen solid. Icicles hang from the ceiling, everything is ice. Squidward can barely move, but Mr. Krabs refuses to turn up the heat. He points to a poorly taped piece of paper reading 62 degrees that he's placed over the actual temperature display. When Squidward protests that there are icicles hanging from the ceiling, Mr. Krabs shouts that he doesn't care if Santa Claus and Jack Frost are having ice cream cones, nobody touches the thermostat. Icicles fall and nearly kill SpongeBob and Squidward, but Mr. Krabs still won't adjust the temperature. He would rather let his employees freeze and risk their lives than spend money on heat. Eventually, the frozen Krusty Krab becomes an ice skating rink that attracts even more customers. Mr. Krabs is delighted because he's selling twice as many patties and doesn't even have to cook them. He declares this is the happiest and most cost-effective day of his whole life. Every single decision Mr. Krabs makes in this episode is driven by extreme frugality and maximizing profit while minimizing expenses. He won't spend a single unnecessary penny. In episode Welcome to the Chum Bucket, Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob he has a card game that night. SpongeBob is shocked when Krabs reveals he's playing cards with Plankton at the Chum Bucket. SpongeBob can't understand why Mr. Krabs would play cards with his arch-enemy who's been trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula for years. Mr. Krabs explains confidently that Plankton is the worst card player in Bikini Bottom. He's been taking Plankton to the cleaners every Thursday night for 15 years. A flashback shows Mr. Krabs and Plankton at a card table with a giant stack of money. Mr. Krabs puts down his cards and rakes in all the cash. Back in the present, his eyes turn into dollar signs as he declares he never loses. Both he and SpongeBob laugh as they walk away. The next morning, Mr. Krabs arrives at work crying. SpongeBob asks how the card game went. Mr. Krabs admits he lost. SpongeBob assumes he lost money and asks how much. Mr. Krabs says he didn't lose any money. SpongeBob panics, thinking maybe he lost the Krusty Krab itself, or even worse, the Krabby Patty secret formula. But Mr. Krabs reveals the truth. He lost SpongeBob. Mr. Krabs explains he bet SpongeBob's contract and lost. Plankton arrives and confirms this isn't a joke. He reveals his master plan. For 15 years, he's been throwing those card games, waiting for Mr. Krabs to slip up. While he may not have the Krabby Patty formula, he has the next best thing, the guy who makes them. Plankton declares he's going to run Mr. Krabs out of business. SpongeBob doesn't want to work for Plankton. He and Mr. Krabs cry loudly and hug each other. Plankton uses a crowbar to pry them apart and takes SpongeBob to the chum bucket in a cage. Mr. Krabs is left alone, having gambled away his most valuable employee to his worst enemy in a card game he thought he couldn't lose. At the end of the episode, after SpongeBob refuses to make Krabby Patties for Plankton, and even the robot version won't cooperate, Plankton comes crawling back to Mr. Krabs crying. He begs Mr. Krabs to take SpongeBob back, saying he can't handle him anymore. Mr. Krabs sees an opportunity and demands $50 to take SpongeBob off Plankton's hands. Plankton agrees immediately, admitting he cheated anyway. Mr. Krabs throws him back into the chum bucket and gets SpongeBob back. The inconsistency is stark. In Krabs a la mode, Mr. Krabs demonstrates extreme financial caution bordering on the pathological. He won't spend a single penny on heat, even when his restaurant is frozen solid and his employees are at risk. He obsesses over every cost. He maximizes profit at every opportunity. He's the embodiment of a penny-pinching businessman who treats every dollar as precious. Yet, in Welcome to the Chum Bucket, this same character regularly gambles with his arch-nemesis. Not only does he gamble, but he's been doing it every Thursday night for 15 years. And he gambles not with money, but with something far more valuable, SpongeBob's contract. SpongeBob is his best employee, the only person who can make perfect Krabby Patties, and the heart of the Krusty Krab's success. Without SpongeBob, Mr. Krabs has no business. A truly financially responsible person would never risk their most valuable asset in a card game with someone who's been trying to destroy their business for years. Mr. Krabs won't spend pennies on heat, but he'll bet his entire livelihood on cards. He calculates every tiny expense down to the degree on a thermostat, but he gambles away the person who generates all his revenue. The cautious businessman who refuses to adjust the temperature by 1 degree would never put SpongeBob's contract on the table in a card game. That's betting the entire business on a hand of cards, even if Mr. Krabs believed he never loses. Any rational business person knows gambling has inherent risk. You can't guarantee victory. And gambling with Plankton specifically is extraordinarily reckless given their history. Either Mr. Krabs is pathologically frugal and makes every decision based on careful financial calculation, or he's a reckless gambler willing to bet his most valuable assets on card games. Krabs a la mode needs him to be the former for its story about refusing to spend money on heat. Welcome to the Chum Bucket needs him to be the latter for its story about SpongeBob working at the Chum Bucket. These two characterizations of Mr. Krabs' financial decision-making cannot logically coexist. Mr. Krabs swings from risking everything for SpongeBob to spending wildly on Pearl, yet both extremes of his financial recklessness can't coexist. Mr. Krabs is spending on Pearl. In episode Whale of a Birthday, Pearl is about to turn 16. She tells Mr. Krabs this is the most important birthday of her entire life. She warns him that if she doesn't have a completely awesome party, her whole high school reputation will collapse. She'll have to drop out, won't go to college, and will never leave home. He'll have to support her for the rest of her life. Mr. Krabs nervously agrees this can't happen and promises to give her a real party without being cheap. But Mr. Krabs' idea of not being cheap is still incredibly cheap. He uses bubble wrap as party favors. He has an It's a Boy banner from when Pearl was born that he's kept for 16 years because he got it on sale. He just crossed out boy and wrote girl next to it. Squidward creates Pearl's portrait out of 400 pounds of raw Krabby Patties. The popcorn is stale, the punch is literally dishwater, the cake is made of cardboard with frosting on top. Pearl's friends mock the party, saying 16 lame parties in a row must be a new record. When Pearl asks if her dad got boys who cry to perform, Mr. Krabs proudly presents Squidward dressed up and singing a parody song instead. Pearl runs out crying, devastated that her father couldn't stop being cheap even for her most important birthday. Mr. Krabs had given SpongeBob his credit card earlier, telling him to buy Pearl's present and that nothing's too good for his little Pearl. SpongeBob follows Pearl around the mall, buying everything she looks at. She admires a comb, lip gloss, clothes, sunglasses, platform shoes, Billy Fishkin's merchandise, a sea pony, and countless other items. Every single thing Pearl glances at, SpongeBob purchases with Mr. Krabs' credit card. The delivery truck arrives and dumps out a massive pile of presents in front of Pearl. She's amazed her dad bought her a boat. Then the real surprise appears. The actual Boys Who Cry emerge from the biggest present and perform their song, It's All About You, live at her party. Pearl's friends faint from excitement. This is everything Pearl ever wanted. Mr. Krabs asks how much all this is costing him. SpongeBob shows him the receipt. It's extremely long, rolling out for several feet. Mr. Krabs freaks out when he sees it. His eyes bulge and his body convulses with shock. But Pearl kisses him and says he got her everything she wanted. Mr. Krabs recovers and says, "Aw, nothing's too good for me, daughter." SpongeBob says, "You're a good dad, Mr. Krabs." The episode cuts to black with Mr. Krabs saying, "Don't push your luck, boy." The ending suggests that despite the massive expense, buying literally everything in the mall, a boat, and hiring the most expensive band in Bikini Bottom, Mr. Krabs ultimately accepts the cost. He freaked out initially, but then acknowledged that nothing is too good for Pearl. He paid for her perfect birthday party, even though it cost him a fortune. In episode Bossy Boots, Mr. Krabs announces that Pearl will be working at the Krusty Krab during summer vacation. She has fresh ideas to bring in hungry customers. Mr. Krabs is excited, saying he can smell the money already. Pearl immediately starts making changes. She designs new uniforms that cost money. She convinces SpongeBob to help her transform the restaurant into a teenage paradise. Pearl and SpongeBob rename the Krusty Krab to the Cuddly Krab. They completely redecorate the exterior with tie-dye colors, rainbows, heart-shaped flags, balloons hanging from the roof, and giant lollipops coming from the chimney. Inside, Pearl decorates everything elaborately. She buys expensive items for every part of the restaurant. Mr. Krabs' office gets redesigned too. He shows SpongeBob his new $40 beanbag chair. He has a blue stress relief doll that cost 5 easy payments of $9.95. He bought $20 sea unicorn wall hangers. He bought $35 heart lights. He put sea ferns on every last table. At first, Mr. Krabs seems happy about all these purchases, proudly showing them off to SpongeBob. But then reality hits. Mr. Krabs holds up a sea fern and his tone changes completely. He asks how they could go on without these ferns on every table, noting their hip and coral. Then he realizes the truth. It's losing money. He starts crying. He admits SpongeBob is right that Pearl is ruining the Krusty Krab. He sobs that he can't fire his pride and joy because it would break her fragile little heart. Mr. Krabs is devastated about the financial losses. He cries openly about losing money on all of Pearl's expensive changes. This is treated as a crisis. The restaurant is losing money and Mr. Krabs can't handle it. He convinces SpongeBob to fire Pearl for him because he can't bear to do it himself. At the end of the episode, after Pearl is fired and everything goes back to normal, SpongeBob has all the Cuddly Krab decorations and items at his house. He's dancing in the uniform, surrounded by the expensive wall hangings, lights, stuffed animals, and other purchases. He says to Gary, "Isn't this great, Gary? And it only cost me 1 year's salary." This line reveals that Mr. Krabs made SpongeBob pay for everything. All those expensive decorations, the $40 chair, the $35 lights, the $20 wall hangers, the sea ferns, Mr. Krabs apparently charged it all to SpongeBob. It cost SpongeBob an entire year's salary to pay off the debt from Pearl's redecorating scheme. The inconsistency is about Mr. Krabs' willingness to accept financial losses related to Pearl's desires. In Whale of a Birthday, Mr. Krabs ultimately accepts spending what must be tens of thousands of dollars on Pearl's birthday. He bought her everything in the mall, a boat, and hired the most expensive band in Bikini Bottom. His initial freakout at the receipt was followed by acceptance. He told Pearl nothing is too good for her. He paid the bill and was acknowledged as a good dad. But in Bossy Boots, Mr. Krabs cannot tolerate financial losses from Pearl's business changes. He cries about losing money. He can't handle the expensive decorations in New Direction. Rather than accept these costs as part of having Pearl work there, he has her fired. And worse, he apparently makes SpongeBob pay for everything. It costs SpongeBob a full year's salary to cover the expenses that Mr. Krabs originally approved. Either Mr. Krabs is willing to spend enormous amounts of money on Pearl without seeking reimbursement, as shown in Whale of a Birthday, or he's unwilling to accept financial losses from Pearl's activities and forces his employee to pay for everything, as shown in Bossy Boots. In one episode, he accepts the cost of making Pearl happy. In the other, he makes someone else pay for it. The show wants Mr. Krabs to be both a father who will ultimately spend anything for his daughter's happiness, and a cheapskate who won't tolerate any financial loss and pushes costs onto others. Whale of a Birthday needed him to be the loving father who accepts the massive expense. Bossy Boots needed him to cry about losing money and make SpongeBob cover the costs. These two versions of how Mr. Krabs handles Pearl-related expenses cannot coexist logically. Mr. Krabs goes from splurging on Pearl's perfect birthday to crying over minor business losses, just as Patrick forgets every failure that proved fry cooking isn't easy. Patrick's fry cook experience. In episode Big Pink Loser, Patrick is devastated because he's never received an award for anything. He says he's never going to get an award because he's never done anything. SpongeBob tries to cheer him up, suggesting Patrick can do anything he wants. When Patrick says he wants to defeat the giant monkey man, SpongeBob tells him to start smaller. Eventually, Patrick suggests getting a job at the Krusty Krab, and SpongeBob agrees this is achievable. Mr. Krabs hires Patrick to work at the Krusty Krab. Patrick excitedly says it was nice of Mr. Krabs to give him a job. SpongeBob mentions Patrick is getting paid $50 an hour, while SpongeBob had to pay Mr. Krabs $100 an hour when he first started. Patrick immediately asks if he gets his award yet, but SpongeBob explains he has to work for it. Patrick's time as a Krusty Krab employee is a complete disaster. His first task is taking food orders to customers, but he gobbles up the order before it reaches the table. SpongeBob tells him to try again, making sure the food gets to the table. Patrick carries the tray to the table successfully this time, but then sits down and eats all the food himself. He spits it out in a customer's face. Next, SpongeBob assigns Patrick to answer the phone at the cash register. The phone rings, and a man asks if this is the Krusty Krab. Patrick responds, "No, this is Patrick," and hangs up. When another caller asks the same question, Patrick answers the same way, getting annoyed. A third caller asks again, and Patrick yells angrily, "No, this is Patrick!" "I'm not a Krusty Krab." SpongeBob has to explain that Krusty Krab is the name of the restaurant, not Patrick's personal identity. SpongeBob then asks Patrick to sweep around table 3 since it looks dusty. Patrick uses the wrong end of the broom, sweeping with the handle instead of the bristles. A customer walks by and mockingly asks if Patrick just blew in from Stupid Town. Patrick gets frustrated and angry about not being able to do anything right. He starts slamming the broom head on the floor repeatedly, creating huge clouds of dust that make customers cough. Finally, SpongeBob tries something even simpler, opening a jar. He demonstrates by opening a jar lid easily. Patrick picks up a pickle instead of a jar. Then he picks up a spatula. Then he takes his pants off. SpongeBob has to explicitly hand him a jar. Patrick puts the lid in his mouth instead of trying to unscrew it. SpongeBob gives him detailed step-by-step instructions on where to place his hand, using warmer and colder cues like a game. After extensive guidance, Patrick finally manages to remove the lid, then immediately cries, thinking he broke it. Throughout his employment at the Krusty Krab, Patrick demonstrates he cannot perform even the simplest restaurant tasks. He can't carry food without eating it. He doesn't understand how restaurant phones work. He can't sweep. He can barely open a jar even with intensive coaching. SpongeBob has to teach him every single thing, and Patrick still struggles. This is Patrick's direct personal experience with working at a restaurant as a fry cook employee. In episode The Fry Cook Games, which aired several months after Big Pink Loser, SpongeBob is training to represent the Krusty Krab at the Fry Cook Games. He's doing push-ups and jump rope, preparing for the competition. Patrick walks over and asks if he can play in the games. SpongeBob tells him sorry, but Patrick would have to be a fry cook to participate. Patrick responds with complete confidence. "Be a fry cook? Is that all I gotta do? That'll be easy." SpongeBob asks what he means by easy. Patrick scoffs and asks, "How hard can it be?" This statement shows Patrick believes fry cooking is simple and requires minimal effort or skill. SpongeBob gets defensive, explaining they don't let just anybody be a fry cook and that fry cooks are an elite corps. Patrick dismisses this, saying, "Oh, come on, you're just flipping patties." SpongeBob protests that flipping is not as easy as it sounds. But Patrick demonstrates flipping a rock with his foot and makes a dismissive noise, implying the job is trivial. The two friends get into an argument. SpongeBob suggests Patrick should compete in the laying under a rock all day games instead. Patrick gets angry and declares, "I'm gonna get a job as a fry cook and it'll be easy." He walks off confidently. Later in the episode, Patrick shows up at the games representing the Chum Bucket. He lifts his shirt to reveal a name tag that says the Chum Bucket Patrick. He proudly announces, "I've been working for the Chum Bucket for almost 5 minutes." The inconsistency is stark. In Big Pink Loser, Patrick had direct hands-on experience working as a fry cook at the Krusty Krab. He struggled with absolutely every task. He couldn't answer phones correctly. He ate the food instead of delivering it. He swept with the wrong end of the broom. He could barely open a jar even with step-by-step instructions. He experienced firsthand how difficult restaurant work was for him, failing at every single job SpongeBob assigned him. Yet in the Fry Cook games, Patrick acts like he's never worked at a restaurant before and has no concept of whether fry cooking is easy or difficult. He confidently claims it will be easy and asks, "How hard can it be?" as if this is a hypothetical question he's never had answered. He shows zero awareness that he previously worked at the Krusty Krab and found even the simplest tasks impossibly difficult. He dismisses fry cooking as just flippin' patties, as if he has no personal experience with the job's actual demands. If Patrick remembered his time working at the Krusty Krab, he would know the answer to how hard can it be. The answer, based on his direct experience, is extremely hard. I couldn't do anything right. But Patrick has apparently completely forgotten this experience. He speaks about fry cooking like someone who's never tried it, not someone who recently worked at a restaurant and failed at every task. Either Patrick worked at the Krusty Krab in Big Pink Loser and should remember how difficult he found every aspect of restaurant work, or Patrick has never worked at a restaurant and can only speculate about whether it would be easy. The show chose both versions. Big Pink Loser needed Patrick to struggle with his first job to show SpongeBob teaching him. The Fry Cook games needed Patrick to confidently claim fry cooking is easy so he could join the competition. These two versions of Patrick's knowledge and experience cannot coexist on the same timeline. Patrick forgets every lesson about fry cooking, just as Sandy forgets what makes Bikini Bottom home, proving both characters can't remember their own experiences. Sandy's commitment to Bikini Bottom. In episode Texas, Sandy is desperately homesick for her home state. She's building sandcastles shaped like Texas, refusing to participate in activities with SpongeBob and Patrick, and becoming increasingly emotional. When SpongeBob catches a jellyfish and tells it to go back home where it belongs, back to its family and friends before they forget about it, Sandy begins to cry so intensely that her helmet fills with tears. She has to attach a flusher handle to drain them out. SpongeBob asks what she's crying about. Sandy initially denies crying, claiming her helmet just sprung a leak, but then confesses she's feeling homesick. SpongeBob and Patrick try to help by taking her blindfolded to her tree dome, saying, "Welcome home, Sandy." But this makes things worse. Sandy cries and runs inside, pulling a lever that brings down a metal covering on the dome. Sandy emerges wearing a cowgirl hat and holding a guitar. She sings a song about wishing she was back in Texas. The lyrics describe it as the prettiest place in the world, mentioning she misses the wide-open skies, her 20 acres, barbecues, and pecan pies. She sings that deep in her heart she'll always be a Texas girl, and she wants to go home. The song is so sad that everyone in Bikini Bottom who hears it starts crying, including Mr. Krabs and customers at the Krusty Krab. SpongeBob and Patrick realize Sandy really misses Texas and decide to bring Texas to her. They set up a Texas-themed party at the Krusty Krab. But Sandy shows up with 2 suitcases, announcing she's going back home to Texas. SpongeBob desperately tries to stop her, suggesting she get one last Krabby Patty or say goodbye to friends, but Sandy gets on a bus preparing to leave. Only when Patrick insults Texas does Sandy get off the bus in anger. SpongeBob and Patrick keep insulting dumb old Texas to make her chase them. They run toward the Krusty Krab, with Sandy pursuing them furiously. Just as Sandy is about to attack SpongeBob, he grabs onto the Krusty Krab door. The front of the building tears off, revealing the surprise Texas party inside with all their friends. Everyone shouts, "Howdy, y'all." Sandy sees they've created square dancing, giant barbecues, homemade peas in a canned pie, and 10-gallon hats. SpongeBob asks if she's going to stay. After a pause, Sandy starts laughing. She explains that she appreciates what they're trying to do, but home isn't about barbecues or pecan pies. Sandy delivers the episode's central message: home is where you're surrounded by critters that care about you. Everyone gathers around Sandy. She realizes what she's been doing and says, "I was home all along, and it took me until now to realize it." SpongeBob asks if that means she'll stay, and Sandy definitively answers, "I'm staying." Everyone cheers. The episode established that Sandy has found her true home in Bikini Bottom because of the friends who care about her, and she's made a conscious decision to stay rather than return to Texas. In episode Chimps Ahoy, Sandy is frantically working in her tree dome. Her inventions are torn up everywhere. When SpongeBob arrives, Sandy is shuddering and panicking, saying, "They're coming! They're coming! The chimps are coming!" She explains her bosses are coming for an inspection. She's worked day and night for a week, but none of her inventions are any good. Then she reveals the stakes. "If I don't have a real impressive invention by this afternoon, they'll cut my funding, and I'll have to leave Bikini Bottom." Sandy shows SpongeBob her failed inventions: a helmet that talks to nuts, a Nutachino machine, and a broken nutcracker. She declares, "I can't even make a simple nutcracker." When SpongeBob offers to help fix things, Sandy responds, "Oh, it's no use. SpongeBob, I just have to face facts. I'm leaving Bikini Bottom because I'm a failure." While SpongeBob and Patrick try to invent something to save her, Sandy prepares to depart. She takes out her guitar and sings a farewell song to Bikini Bottom. The lyrics are a goodbye to the town. So long, Bikini Bottom, I can't leave without a goodbye. But please don't think bad of me if I start to cry. She sings about the things she'll miss about the city, even the smoggy, crowded parts, and the stinging jellyfish. She sings, farewell, Bikini Bottom, now I really hate to go, 'cause the things I'll miss the most of all are the friends I've come to know. After finishing her song, Sandy literally walks to a bus stop with her bags. A bus pulls up, and the driver asks if she wants to go somewhere when she's got nowhere else to go. He says they make stops in Quittersville, Failure Town, and Loserburg. Sandy is actively boarding this bus to leave Bikini Bottom when she hears screaming from her tree dome and goes to investigate. The only reason Sandy doesn't leave is because her nutcracker accidentally becomes a banana peeler that impresses her bosses enough to give her a 20-year contract with a substantial pay raise. Without this lucky accident, Sandy would have gotten on that bus and left Bikini Bottom permanently. The inconsistency is glaring. In Texas, Sandy learned the most important lesson about what home really means. She realized that home isn't a physical location or regional features like barbecues and pecan pies. Home is being surrounded by people who care about you. She explicitly stated, I was home all along in Bikini Bottom because of her friends. She made a firm decision to stay based on this realization. Yet in Chimps Ahoy, Sandy is completely willing to abandon that home because of work funding issues. She doesn't fight to stay. She doesn't seek alternative funding or consider other options. She immediately accepts that losing this particular job means leaving Bikini Bottom entirely. She sings a farewell song and boards a bus to leave town. If Sandy truly internalized the lesson from Texas that Bikini Bottom is her real home because her friends are there, why would she leave so easily? The friends didn't change. SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, Mr. Krabs, and everyone else who made Bikini Bottom her home are still there. Yet losing her job funding is apparently enough reason to abandon the place she declared was home all along. Either Sandy learned that home is where your friends are and would stay in Bikini Bottom regardless of job circumstances, or home is dependent on having proper employment and she'd leave if work didn't work out. Texas established the former. Chimps Ahoy showed the latter. These two versions of what home means to Sandy and her commitment to staying in Bikini Bottom cannot both be true. SpongeBob's friends completely ignore everything they've learned before, setting up shocking reversals that change everything. Squidward's teaching effectiveness. In episode Artist Unknown, Squidward opens an art class at the Adult Learning Center. He's excited about becoming professor of art and teaching the masses. When the class time arrives, everyone outside leaves when they realize it's not cooking class. Only SpongeBob remains as his sole student. Squidward resignedly accepts having to teach SpongeBob. SpongeBob is eager to learn and calls Squidward his teacher. Squidward immediately establishes a rigid teaching methodology. He makes SpongeBob repeat 3 statements. I have no talent. Mr. Tentacles has all the talent. And if I'm lucky, some of Mr. Tentacles' talent may rub off on me. This sets up Squidward's authoritarian approach where he positions himself as the sole source of artistic knowledge. Squidward starts with the basics, drawing a circle. He draws a crooked circle himself and asks if he's going too fast. But SpongeBob draws a perfect circle effortlessly. When Squidward demands he show his process, SpongeBob draws a realistic head first, then erases details twice until only a perfect circle remains. This demonstrates SpongeBob has natural artistic talent that works through unconventional methods. Squidward rejects this approach. He crumples up SpongeBob's perfect circle and tells him to forget circles. When SpongeBob creates rippy bits by arranging torn paper into art, Squidward rips it up and asks if SpongeBob wants to learn art or not. SpongeBob apologizes and promises to listen to Squidward's instruction. For sculpting, Squidward demonstrates hitting marble with a chisel, which breaks into rubble. But SpongeBob hits his marble once, and it becomes a perfect sculpture of Michelangelo's David. Squidward stares at it with tears in his eyes, calling it beautiful, before snapping out of it. He insists it's not real sculpture because it didn't take more time. He lectures SpongeBob that you can't sculpt willy-nilly. You have to go by the book and follow the rules. Otherwise, you'll never get past amateur hour. Squidward alters the sculpture by adding his own nose to it, declaring, "There, now it's art." SpongeBob breaks down crying, saying he would never have thought of that. He declares he'll never be a great artist like Squidward and doesn't deserve his tutoring. He crawls out the door, claiming he doesn't even deserve to use Squidward's doors. He ends up in a dumpster being taken to the dump, believing he deserves this treatment. Later, Squidward needs SpongeBob to recreate the sculpture to impress an art collector. He finds SpongeBob at the dump and convinces him to try again, promising that with a great teacher like Squidward, anything is possible. Back at the classroom, Squidward tells SpongeBob to just do what he did before, but SpongeBob says he can't. Squidward tries starting with the circle again. SpongeBob draws a crooked circle like Squidward did earlier, the wrong way. When Squidward asks about the head and erasing technique, SpongeBob says that stuff isn't in the book. Squidward crumples paper and reminds him of the collage technique. SpongeBob says that's not in the book either. Squidward finally yells, "Forget about the book!" and rips it up. He tries to inspire SpongeBob by making a mess and asking what it makes him want to do. SpongeBob just puts the book back together. Squidward's nose melts off his face in frustration. They move to the marble. SpongeBob goes through an elaborate ritual, concentrating, visualizing, embracing the marble, sniffing it, licking it, washing it, dating it, becoming the same size as it. He declares he's seen the sculpture within. SpongeBob taps the marble with the chisel and it shatters into rubble. He adds a stone nose shaped like Squidward's and declares, "Now it's art." Squidward tries to maintain composure but goes completely insane. He kicks marbles, eats marble, squeezes paint tubes, and smashes everything while screaming in frustration. The episode's message is clear. Squidward's rigid teaching methodology destroyed SpongeBob's natural artistic talent. When SpongeBob created art instinctively, he made perfect circles and perfect sculptures. When forced to follow Squidward's rules and go by the book, SpongeBob lost all ability. He could only produce crooked circles and piles of rubble. Squidward's teaching approach actively ruined his students' natural gifts. In episode Squidward's School for Grown-Ups, Patrick wakes up with what appears to be a beard on his face. Squidward sees this and tells Patrick that facial hair is a good start into the adult world. Patrick asks Squidward to show him what mature people do. After some convincing, Squidward agrees to take on this mission, hoping it will lead to a quiet, grown-up neighborhood. SpongeBob asks to tag along and observe the instruction, arguing that some of the maturity lessons will rub off on him too, bringing them 2 steps closer to a quiet neighborhood. Squidward agrees this makes sense. He escorts Patrick to his house for personal grooming and a grown-up makeover. Squidward measures Patrick, gives him proper clothes, and teaches him how to present himself. Patrick successfully adopts these lessons. At the Bikini Bottom Men's Club, Patrick acts appropriately refined. When offered milk and cookies like SpongeBob gets, Patrick starts to accept them but catches himself. Squidward redirects him to the tetrazzini that grown-ups ordered. Patrick responds, "Duh, yeah, Squidward. I'm frankly shocked they serve such elementary fare here." Squidward approves. Indeed. At the art museum, Squidward shows Patrick classical artwork. When Patrick initially calls something boring, he quickly corrects himself, saying he meant flooring and that it complements the artwork exquisitely. Squidward agrees. When SpongeBob misbehaves and ruins a painting, Patrick himself calls for security to remove SpongeBob. This shows Patrick has internalized the mature behavior Squidward taught him. After SpongeBob is ejected, Squidward tells Patrick he's very proud of what he did. He says the beard was the best thing that ever happened to Patrick, other than Squidward himself. Patrick has successfully transformed from childish to refined through Squidward's instruction. At the Opera House, Patrick continues demonstrating mature behavior, calling the performance most exemplary and saying his seat choice is certainly more so than that rapscallion sponge whose name we shall not mention would have picked. Throughout the episode, Squidward's structured teaching approach works perfectly. Patrick learns to dress properly, speak formally, appreciate art, behave in upscale venues, and conduct himself like a gentleman. Squidward's methodology successfully transforms Patrick from immature to sophisticated. The teaching is effective until the very end, when it's revealed Patrick's beard was actually a sea urchin sleeping on his face. The inconsistency is fundamental. In Artist Unknown, Squidward's rigid, rule-based teaching methodology actively destroys natural ability. SpongeBob had perfect artistic talent that worked through unconventional methods. When forced to follow Squidward's by-the-book approach and formal rules, SpongeBob became completely unable to create art. Squidward's teaching turned perfection into failure. But in Squidward's School for Grown-Ups, Squidward's rigid, rule-based teaching methodology successfully improves behavior. Patrick transforms from immature to refined by following Squidward's structured lessons. Squidward's teaching turned childishness into sophistication. Either Squidward is a terrible teacher whose formal methods destroy natural ability and make students worse, or Squidward is an effective teacher whose structured approach improves students. Artist Unknown establishes the former. Squidward's school for grown-ups demonstrates the latter. Both characterizations of Squidward's teaching effectiveness cannot coexist logically. Squidward either ruins talent or refines it, just as Patrick either creates marketing, miracles, or fails completely, proving Bikini Bottom logic has no consistency. Patrick's marketing success for Plankton. In episode Chum Bucket Supreme, Plankton is frustrated because he has no customers while the Krusty Krab parking lot is jam-packed. Karen suggests he advertise his product. Plankton creates a sign reading "Chum is metabolic fuel" using letters from a box. He's excited about this marketing genius. Patrick walks by and tries to read the slogan. The complex words confuse him so much that his head literally starts smoking and catches fire. Patrick tells Plankton that these words make his head sad. His brain cries, saying, "I don't get it." Plankton dismisses him, saying the sign will attract more customers than Patrick can count. Time passes with 0 customers. Patrick switches the letters around on the sign to spell "Chum is fum." Plankton is angry, pointing out this isn't even spelled correctly. It says "fum," not "fun." But then crowds of customers start flooding into the Chum Bucket. Plankton realizes that apparently Dumb sells Chum and declares Patrick their new advertising director. The episode shows massive success. Customers line up stating Chum is fum as they eat the chum, even though they explicitly say it tastes awful. Pilar says this chum tastes awful, and Nat agrees. Yeah, but that slogan is so catchy that we can't stop eating it. They both throw up after saying the slogan, but they keep eating because the catchphrase is so effective. Patrick later changes the slogan to "Fum is chum," and customers react positively. Nat says, "I'm so happy that they changed that old tired slogan, Chum is fum." Pilar responds, "Yeah, that new slogan, Fum is chum, is way cooler." They continue eating and throwing up, but the slogan keeps them coming back. Plankton's success continues to grow. The episode shows a montage of his achievements. People eating chum everywhere, billboards posted with the new slogan, Plankton appearing on the cover of Bikini Bottom Restaurant magazine, many cars parked outside the Chum Bucket, and the local hockey team lining up for chum. Patrick gets promoted for his marketing genius. The success only ends when Plankton insults his customers over the loudspeaker, calling them buffoons, morons, the dumbest of the dumb, and the stupidest of the stupid. Customers get angry and leave. But the entire episode proves that with the right marketing slogan, even a misspelled nonsensical one like Chum is fum, Plankton can attract massive crowds and keep them eating his terrible food. At the end, Patrick goes to work for Mr. Krabs and paints "Krabby Patties are fum" on a banner, suggesting the same marketing strategy will work for the Krusty Krab. The episode's message is clear. Catchy slogans, no matter how stupid, can successfully sell terrible products. In episode Plankton's Regular, Plankton is in his empty restaurant screaming in frustration. Karen asks what he's going to do about having no customers. Plankton says he doesn't know anymore and starts crying. Karen suggests working on a new recipe, but Plankton asks what's the point since he hasn't had a customer in years. Then Nat walks in asking for a chum stick. Plankton can't believe someone actually wants his food. Nat eats it, enjoys it, and says he's coming back tomorrow. Plankton is amazed that finally someone came in who has good taste. The next day, Plankton waits 8 hours for Nat to return. When Nat finally arrives, he orders another chum stick and declares it perfection. Nat announces he's coming back again tomorrow, and the day after that, and next week after that. He says, "You've got a regular customer on your hands." Plankton celebrates, saying, "At last, I've got my revenge." He goes to the Krusty Krab to brag to Mr. Krabs that he no longer needs to copy him because he has his own winning recipe now. Mr. Krabs is shocked to see Nat request another chum stick from Plankton. He orders SpongeBob to get Nat back on their side with Krabby Patties. SpongeBob tries multiple tactics offering free Krabby Patties, pretending to trip and accidentally shove patties in Nat's mouth, disguising himself as Karen to serve a Krabby Patty. Every attempt fails. Nat consistently refuses, saying he only wants Plankton's chum. SpongeBob explicitly confirms this with Nat. "So you're saying that you love chum, and all that you ever eat is chum?" Nat responds firmly, "Yeah, that's right." The episode treats Plankton having even one regular customer as a monumental, nearly impossible achievement. Mr. Krabs tries desperately to compete, even attempting to steal Plankton's chum recipe. At the end, it's revealed Karen paid Nat to pretend to like the chum. Nat confesses, "I can't eat another bite of that slop, no matter how much you pay me. I have eaten 10 of those things, and I've already had to go to the doctor. Twice." Karen explains she paid Nat so Plankton would quit his constant complaining about having no customers. The episode treats it as obvious that Plankton could never have a real customer. Karen had to pay someone to fake being a regular because there was no other way Plankton could ever get customers. The reveal confirms that getting genuine customers for Terrible Chum is impossible. It requires actual bribery. The food is so bad it sends people to the doctor twice. The inconsistency is fundamental. In Chum Bucket Supreme, simple, catchy slogans successfully bring massive crowds to eat Plankton's Terrible Chum. Even though the food tastes awful and makes people vomit, the marketing works. Patrick's stupid slogans, "Chum is Fum" and "Fum is Chum," create such successful advertising that Plankton experiences unprecedented business success. The episode proves marketing can overcome terrible product quality. But in Plankton's Regular, marketing doesn't exist as an option. The episode treats getting even one customer as nearly impossible without literal bribery. There's no suggestion that a catchy slogan or advertising could help. Plankton hasn't had a customer in years. The only way to get a regular is for Karen to secretly pay someone to pretend. The episode confirms this is the only method that could possibly work for such terrible food. Either catchy marketing slogans can successfully bring crowds of customers to eat terrible food, as proven in Chum Bucket Supreme, or getting customers for terrible food is impossible without paying them to fake it, as shown in Plankton's Regular. The show chose both versions. Chum Bucket Supreme needed Patrick's marketing genius to work brilliantly. Plankton's Regular needed genuine customers to be impossible. These two realities cannot coexist logically. Patrick can either turn Terrible Chum into a marketing miracle, or Plankton could never get a real customer, proving Bikini Bottom's business logic has no rules. Mr. Krabs and Plankton's relationship history. In episode Plankton's Army, Mr. Krabs addresses his Krusty Krab crew with an important announcement. He declares that today marks the 25th anniversary of the first time his arch-enemy Plankton ever attempted to steal the secret Krabby Patty formula. He emphasizes that Plankton is his arch-enemy, establishing them as longtime adversaries. The episode then flashes back to show the very first attempt. Young Plankton approaches Mr. Krabs and politely requests the secret formula. Mr. Krabs refuses. Plankton accepts this and walks away sadly. This presents their relationship as one where Plankton was always an outsider, trying to acquire something that belonged solely to Mr. Krabs. The flashback continues, showing Plankton's persistence over the years. He returned to ask again more politely, but Mr. Krabs refused once more. Plankton used disguises, dressing as a cockroach, but Mr. Krabs squished him. He used super science, drinking chemicals to transform into a cockroach, but Mr. Krabs stepped on him again. He tried civil disobedience, marching with a picket sign declaring he was not a roach, but Mr. Krabs squashed him once more. Mr. Krabs concludes by stating he always came out on top. He explains that thousands of failures have made Plankton crafty. The entire episode frames their relationship as one of perpetual opposition, Plankton the villain constantly trying to steal from Mr. Krabs the hero. They're presented as natural enemies who have always been on opposite sides. Throughout the episode, there's no hint that they were ever anything but adversaries. The narrative treats the formula as something that always belonged exclusively to Mr. Krabs, with Plankton being an external threat trying to steal it. The 25-year timeline suggests their conflict stretches back to the very beginning, with that first exchange establishing the pattern that would continue for decades. In episode Friend or Foe, the story begins very differently. Mr. Krabs sits on a barrel and makes a shocking revelation to SpongeBob and the others. There was a time when Plankton and he were best friends. Everyone gasps. SpongeBob can barely believe it. Mr. Krabs confirms this, explaining they were friends at birth. The flashback shows baby Plankton and baby Krabs born on the same date, November 30th, 1942. Baby Krabs laughs and puts baby Plankton on the mobile hanging above him. The scene is marked with everyone reacting warmly to how cute this friendship was. The flashback continues to their third birthday, showing toddler Krabs helping toddler Plankton blow out candles on a cake reading Big Boys. Plankton dives off Krabs' tongue into the birthday cake like jumping into a swimming pool. Mr. Krabs narrates that things were wonderful until they hit grade school. At Poseidon Elementary School, the two friends are shown together in science class. When bullies pick on Plankton, Krabs defends him, demanding they apologize. The bullies mock Krabs for his ragged clothes, calling him Rag Boy, and making fun of him for getting clothes from the trash. Mr. Krabs explains in narration that when he was growing up, times were tough, and his mother had to fashion his clothes from rags. The episode shows Krabs and Plankton walking through carnival grounds together as friends, with Plankton conversing with him. Mr. Krabs narrates that one day, while Plankton and he plotted their revenge, showing they were allies planning together against their bullies. When Krabs discovers money for the first time, he uses it to buy a balloon for Plankton, referring to him as his best pal. The episode then reveals how they became business partners. They visited Stinky Burgers together, the only place to get burgers in town. When Stinky insults them both, they work together to create their own burger. Mr. Krabs narrates that they went back to their secret hideaway at the dump to prove they could make an edible burger. The two friends work together, creating the recipe, keeping careful records. Plankton speaks gently as they complete their burger. They convert a trailer in the dump into a restaurant together. When the grand opening happens, Mr. Krabs collects money while Plankton serves customers. They're equal partners running a business. Their friendship only ended when they fought over what to do with their success. The recipe tore in half during their argument. Plankton was ejected from their shared restaurant. At the end of the episode, both characters express remorse about losing their friendship. Mr. Krabs says emotionally that Plankton was his only true friend that wasn't currency, but money doesn't hug back. Plankton responds that his life has been nothing but disappointments since they became enemies. All these years he's been trying to steal the formula, but he was really just trying to steal back their friendship. It's all he ever really wanted, to get back to the way it used to be, with the two of them against the world. The inconsistency is fundamental. In Plankton's army, the 25th anniversary marks when Plankton first tried to steal the formula, suggesting they were always enemies from the start. That first interaction shows Plankton as an outsider asking for something that never belonged to him, being refused, and beginning his life of attempted theft. The episode treats their adversarial relationship as the natural order that existed from the beginning. But friend or foe reveals they were best friends from birth, allies throughout childhood, and business partners who created a restaurant together. They only became enemies after a falling out about their shared business. The formula wasn't something Plankton tried to steal from day one. It came from their partnership, and Plankton even had half the original recipe. Either Mr. Krabs and Plankton were always enemies with Plankton perpetually trying to steal from the beginning, or they were lifelong best friends and business partners who had a tragic falling out. Plankton's army establishes the former. Friend or foe reveals the latter. Both versions of their relationship history cannot be true. If you enjoyed our video, subscribe to our channel for more videos like these, and I'll see you in the next one.